0.67 trillion budget is going to make its way here to Parliament buildings at exactly 3 p.m. by none other than the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Njugu. He will be bringing that particular document, the infamous breakfast. As you know, it will be making its way from Treasury House all the way to the Parliament buildings. Of course, it's a chilly weather, but that will not stop that particular budget being brought here to the legislators, of course, where the CS, that is Njugu, will be presenting it to the members of Parliament and to the millions of Kenyans who will be watching on this particular program. Of course, KBC Channel 1 will be giving you wall-to-wall coverage of this particular proceedings. But before I continue with this particular discussion, already I've been keeping here the Senator of Nyeri, that is Mheshimiwa Wahome. Mheshimiwa Wahome, sorry for keeping here outside the cold, but we will start maybe with your reaction. What should Kenyans expect from this particular 3.67 trillion budget that is going to be tabled today by none other than the Treasury, Njugu?
Thank you very much. Indeed, this is a very exciting day. This is the first Kenya Kwanza budget that will be pressing into public, into ensuring that we deliver the mandate that we promised the Kenyans. You can agree with me, this has been one of the most debated budgets. It is a good thing that Kenyans have become of age, that now they start to analyze things and look at factors as the way they are. We know that we took the government in a situation where Kenya has been relying largely on borrowed money to finance even the current expenditure, and the Kenya Kwanza government has committed itself to saying we cannot keep on borrowing to finance the current expenditure, and we are saying it is the high time that Kenyans started taking their own economic drivers in their own hands, and that cannot be done in any other way other than to pay taxes. And that is why the debate on the finance bill has elicited a lot of interest among the Kenyans, with of course diverse observation. Yes, indeed, life is at a high, very, very, very high. The cost of living has never been as high as it is today, but it is also the high time that we say that we must stop digging the hole deeper, we must stop borrowing more, and we must start committing ourselves to become the main drivers of our own economic development. And that can only be done by ensuring that we pay taxes, that we dig a little bit deeper in our pockets, so that we do not have to keep on borrowing to refinance the current expenditure. However, I must also tell Kenyans, this being the first budget that we are leading in the Kenya Kwanza government, it looks like it's a bit punitive, but I would say that it is quite a balanced budget, whereby we're looking at taxing those who are earning, and we know that there's quite a huge unemployment in this country, and the only way to create employment is creating impetus, and that is why we are talking about construction industry, because we know construction industry is one of the industries that creates employment very, very fast. And we're also talking about an impetus that will also encourage manufacturers of cement, steel, and everything else that goes into the construction industry, so that we can have a situation whereby we are reviving the Kenyan economy after the COVID has pushed it downwards. Okay. I think it's quite exciting.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, we can see Parliament has been allocated almost 40 billion to that particular retrospect in this budget. Of course, it's one of the largest budgets that this country has ever seen. Do you think that 40 billion gives you, the legislators, ample time and resources to carry out your duties here in Parliament?
Well, in an optimum situation, we could have seen, for example, the creation of a kind of an allocation that could have set the MCAs free from the dependence with their governors. That has not been achieved because we are still governing with constrained resources. We could have seen a situation where we allocate a little bit more oversight resources to the Senate. That has also not been able to happen because we are still in a situation where we do not have enough money. However, I think that the resources that have been allocated to the Parliament will enable us to perform our oversight job. However, we could have wanted to see a little bit more come in terms of the allocation. We know that there is quite a big disparity, especially in the CDF allocation, where all the constituencies get the same amount of money. We could have wanted to see a situation whereby the allocation of the CDF is actually determined by the numbers of the people living in a given constituency. However, looking forward, I think that's where we would want to move. This being the first budget, I think it's very ambitious, and I think we do not also want to do everything at the same time, but gradually moving forward, that is where we want to move. Remember, there's been a discussion about one man, one shilling, one vote. Yes. I think this is a conversation that we'll continue having, and moving forward in the coming budget, I think we should would move closer to getting that, so that we would have a situation whereby the number of people in a given constituency will be determining the amount of allocation that they get, other than saying a blank allocation for each constituency, because that ends up putting some constituencies at disadvantage. However, we must also look at the diversity of this country. Some regions are more advanced than others. Some others are densely populated. Others are quite extensive in terms of the place they occupy. All those factors must be looked into, but we cannot do that before we start developing our own dynamics to learn our own economy, and instead of borrowing money to bridge the gap that has always been left in the finance budget, which we've been doing the last 60 years. It is the first time that we are seeing an ambitious budget that looks into meeting the gap without having to resort into borrowing, and by extending the tax basket so that we can be able to generate more revenue and more resources, and at the end of the day save the country from the interest that we've been paying borrowed money in foreign countries.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, I'm sure you were following the proceedings yesterday night at the National Assembly. You saw what your colleagues' political lines were drawn, even to the extent of surprises were installed in terms of Gathunguri Member of Parliament, that is Ms. Wamushomba, who surprised many given that she comes from the ruling party, saying that Kenyans are not saying that this particular bill is tenable to them. Do you think, as a legislator, what have the Wananchi from your area have been telling you in regards to this bill?
Indeed, Wananchi has been telling me that we must do the implementation of the budget gradually, but I'm also telling them that this is like a case of a surgical operation that must be performed. We would want to do it gradually, but then at the end of the day, we must also look at the future of our children. We must look at the future of this country, and indeed, we must also agree that it is imprudent to keep on borrowing to finance the gap that we've been having, and therefore, raising the tax as hard as the times are, we must also agree that it is the only option we have, because the other option would be to sell the assets of the national government, which I think, looking at both the sides, then it is better to raise the revenue other than the taxes through revenue, other than selling the national assets.
Now, given that this bill will come to the Senate as well, so that you can have your say in that particular retrospect, but Mheshimiwa, we know that it is not over until next week. We do know that that particular bill will enter its third stage of reading, and of course it will be presented once more on the floor of the House. Do you think some of the legislators, either from both political sides, will come with amendments, because that is the stage to bring those amendments to change some of those clauses? In your view, what clauses do you think should be amended?
Well, let me say that there is a discussion, and there's going to be a continuous discussion about it. Everybody does agree that we must indeed, the only way to raise revenue is through taxes. Some argue that we could have done it gradually. Others are of the opinion, and that's the school of thought that I share, that being gradual could make us miss the targets, because we have debts that we must pay, we have pending bills that we must pay, and those are the first charge in any budget, and therefore we have some constraints, some variables that are fixed, and we cannot be able to give them to do them gradually. We know that in September we'll be paying some of the loans, will be falling, the Eurobond will be falling due, and as a matter of urgency we must pay that. We've seen countries that have not been able to pay their debts, what has happened to them. We would not want Kenya to get there, and therefore I think that as the conversation continues, people are coming of age, and we are saying now, regardless of our political lines, we must look at this country as our country, and we must also accept the fact that we are the ones who are going to determine the future of this country economically, politically, and socially, and therefore we are making decisions not based on political lines. But I think most of us, as much as we know that Wananchi are not for the finance bill, we say it is the only way, and I think it's the important that it is the role of the readers to tell people the hard truth, and even to make the decisions which are unpopular, like now saying we need this finance bill so that Kenya can stop depending on borrowed money. I think that's where we are today.
Maybe, Mheshimiwa, would you say the loopholes that have been in this particular country in terms of corruption, graft cases, we have witnessed several incidences, do you think the government has done enough to curb those loopholes so that the revenue can at least rise to where the government needs it to be?
I do agree, yes, corruption has been a big obstacle and a major challenge in this country for the last 60 years. But I would also want to say it is not actually only the role of the government alone to curb corruption, because corruption in the government is perpetuated with the private sector. And I do agree, yes, we have a role, all of us as Kenyans, to ensure that when you bring goods into the country, you do not under-declare them, you do not collude with the government officials so that you can swindle money from Kenya. And I think Kenyans now feeling the pinch of having to to finance their own development, they'll become more assertive. We as the registrators will be under having the role of the oversight. We will ensure that we cannot be taxed and wait and see people misappropriating the very money, the very same money that we are paying. We remember the parliamentarians are falling also under the category of those who will be taxed heavily, and therefore we will also ensure that we do not sit and watch our money that we've paid being misappropriated. Therefore, I think moving forward, I would say that there'll be enhanced oversight role from the parliamentarians, from the Kenyans, because they are the ones who are financing. Unlike previously, when this money had been borrowed from outside and people did not really care so much how the money was used. This time around, it is our money that we are using, it is our taxes that we are paying, and we must also ensure that our money is prudently put into use. I think there are no two ways about it.
Maybe, Mheshimiwa, your final remarks as we wait for that particular bill. 3 p.m. It's a long wait, but we still have to wait for that particular bill. But what are your final remarks to the millions of Kenyans watching you right now?
Thank you very much. All those watching us, I know it is very hard to face the reality that despite the hard economic times, despite the high cost of living, that we're still telling Kenyans to dig deeper into their pockets. But I'm telling them the opportunity cost of not doing that, what we'll do to the sustainability of the future generation will even be more costlier. And it is the time we sacrifice ourselves, like our parents did sacrifice themselves. They went to the forest, fought for our independence so that we can enjoy today. It is time for us now also to actually tighten our belts and say, let's dig deeper into our pockets so that our future generation can enjoy what we are doing today. It is our responsibility to make sure that whatever we are doing is going to be sustainable. Borrowing money to pay for the current expenditure is not sustainable. The only sustainable way is to go back into our pockets, to make sure that we widen the tax bracket, and to take the development of our country in our own hands. And that is our national responsibility. And I would request our people to support this, because in a couple of years, when we do it light and do it the light way, we will appreciate what we did today, because we'll have reduced not only the national tax debt, but we'll also have increased the direct investment using our own resources. Our development will be driven by, it will be a people-driven economic development, which is the only way to sustain economic development.
Thank you so much. That is the Nyeri Senator Mheshimiwa Wahome, just giving us an intrigue or insights of what is going to happen within the corridors of the Augusta House. Of course, it's going to be a joint session between the senators and the National Assembly. Of course, it will be a chosen few who will be able to sit in that particular precinct when it comes to the listening of the Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndugu when he presented the 3.67 trillion budget of the national government. We have seen the allocations done, of course, but we need to see where is this particular budget and which sectors will benefit. We do know the education sector will be the largest, of course, beneficiary when it comes to this particular budget, as well as the health sector. That is where President William Ruto and his administration are banking on. Of course, we know the clauses that were amended before even the Kimani Kuria-led Finance Committee brought their report after a 5-day hiatus in Naivasha, that is in Nakuru County, to make those suggestions of public participations that were included in that particular report. Let me just give you a little bit of figures before we hand it over back to you. We do know that the executive is allocated 2.1 trillion of that particular budget. Parliament will be receiving the second of 40 billion, and of course the judiciary 22.9 billion. We'll be giving you a wall-to-wall coverage of this particular proceedings. We are all here, the team Bunge, of course, from Kevin Washira to Gladys Mungai, as well as Kamche Menza, and I myself, of course, will be here to bring you the latest from this particular end. Security apparatus has been heightened here. A number of security operators are currently roaming around the precincts of Parliament building to make it safe before the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Professor Njuguna Ndugu, makes his way just here, a few kilometers from where Parliament is. Of course, we'll cover that as well, but we'll be looking also to the legislators to tell us about some of these clauses and if there will be any amendments. We do know that finally yesterday what happened once the Kenya Kwanza as well as the Azimio wing and 127 legislators vote to pass the second reading. But for now, that is all we have for you. We'll be back with more. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdiaziz. They are coming to us from Parliament buildings, giving us quite an overview, speaking to the Nyeri senator who has said that despite this particular budget looking very tough on Kenyans who are already experiencing a high cost of living, it is unnecessary evil, so to say. And to just bring this conversation on is in studio with me is Alex Kanyi. He is a partner at CDH Kenya. He is on my immediate left, as well as Hadija Nanyomo, a partner at Ernst & Young. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Karibuni sana. So 3.6 trillion shillings budget. What are your expectations of this particular budget and your key highlights? Let's start with you, Alex.
Well, I think for me what I'm expecting to hear is the forecast for expenditure, and some of it has been highlighted in terms of how much goes to judiciary, the 23 billion, how much goes to the executive, the 2.2 trillion, how much goes to the National Assembly, 41 billion, and other expenditures. But more importantly is how this will be supported. Some of it will be supported through loans, as we know it, and some of it will be supported through tax revenue. And I believe that is where Kenyans are looking forward to actually see how government will raise revenue, basically taking it out of their pockets. So it will be an interesting thing to hear what happens then today when the CS then presents the budget.
We are all waiting for that time. Hadija, yourself?
Thank you. I think for me, I come in with the glass half empty because of what has been happening in the past, and the fact that we are looking at 3.6 trillion. We have it broken down into the tax revenue projections, the loan and all. But again, we have to look at the reality, how feasibly we are going to get this in practice. Because when you look at the allocations and the minds that have gone behind the allocations, there's quite a lot to unpack there. Because when you look at education, which has got the highest, you're like, okay, you're going to put in a lot, but are you expecting returns in the near future? Is it a short-term investment? Is it long-term? And when you look at where we are, what have we put in place to ensure that we are actually going to reduce on the expenditure or even to achieve the projected revenue? Because we are seeing a finance bill which is too big. It's probably 200 pages. Never seen. The question is, are we in reality and all those expectations, are we going to get that revenue? And what is going to fuel it? Because you have to milk to feed a cow in order to milk it. I expect to see how this cow is going to be fed.
Right. We shall be talking much more deeper about that particular topic, matters taxation and how the government plans to ensure that it reaches its revenue targets. But for now, we want to get the views of Eldoret residents. Our very own Parsayo is in Eldoret. We just want to take you there to get the views of Kenyans. Remember that most of Kenyans across social media platforms have been complaining about the taxation. The finance bill yesterday was passed. A number of issues in there include the 1.5% housing levy. Of course, Kenyans complained about the 3% levy that had been set before. It was amended down to 1.5%. But the cap about 2,500 shillings was removed. That means that for every salaried Kenyan, you will be paying 1.5% of your actual gross income. Let's just get to Eldoret. Parsayo, what are Eldoret residents saying about the budget expectations?
Well, a very good morning to you, Betty Kiptum. Like you've said, we're coming live to you from Western Gishu County. To be precise, Lagoon Garage in Eldoret town, where I'm joined by some individuals who could perhaps give us the expectations on the budget, which is set to be tabled today by the CS Treasury. Good morning.
Yes, morning.
What is your name?
Pito Tieno.
Matarajio yako ni nini kuhusiana na budget ambayo inasomwa leo?
Hii budget ni mbaya sana. Tuli expect makubwa kwa serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, kwa sababu hii ndio budget yao ya kwanza, lakini chakula iko juu, kazi haiendi, customer analia kila mali. Sasa budget iko mbaya sana.
Na sasa wasua kama nyinyi kama watu wa garage, mko na maoni gani? Mafuta, bei ya mafuta, nini nyingine?
Mafuta iko juu sasa, hata spare sasa mbaya. Ukijaribu kufanya kazi unaona hiyo pesa hata haitoshi chakula, tunaumia zaidi. Sasa vile tulichagua hii serikali yetu kama watu wa Uasin Gishu, tuli expect serikali ya President William Ruto ataokoa mwananchi ya kawaida kama sisi, na tujaokolewa kabisa. Bajeti iko mbaya zaidi.
Sawa. Na labda mwenzangu unaweza pia tupatia maoni yako, karibu tuambie jina yako, unafanya kazi gani na uko na maoni gani kuhusu bajeti ambayo inasomwa leo?
Kwa majina na Alexander Njembe Muzami, mimi ni mkazi wa hapa Eldoret. Kwa hii bajeti yenye imesomwa ni mbaya zaidi, kwa sababu ukiangalia kila kitu imepanda bei. Hata sisi magari sasa kama spare, ukienda kwa duka unasikia bei iko juu, kila kitu bei iko juu, paka unashindwa tuko inji gani hii. Kwa hivyo hii serikali tulikuwa nafikiria itatuokoa kama mwananchi wa kawaida, lakini sio mzuri.
Kwa maneno ya gharama ya maisha na vitu vingine, haswa wewe kama mfanyikazi wa garage.
Nataka kunijengea nyumba mimi iko na nyumba yangu, naenda kuishi nyumba gani sasa ingine hiyo? Hii ni haramu, wanataka kukaranga sisi pesa yetu hapa tu. Wameongeza vitu ati hii ni ukora wameingiza ndani hiyo. Hakuna kitu wamefanya hapo mzuri.
Alright, shukrani. Na kaka, unaweza kupatia pia maoni yako kuhusiana na bajeti ambayo karibu nasomwa leo? Hapo hivyo, angalia huko, angalia kwa kamera ukiniongelesha.
Naam.
Jina yako, unafanya kazi gani hapa, nini?
Naitwa Kasim Tai. Mimi ni mfanyikazi wa Eldoret. Natoka kule Kakamega County. Kulingana bajeti itasomwa leo, si kama Kenya tunatarajia. Labda president atashukisha vitu. Alafu upande wa mafuta ya magari pia alifaa punguze. Njua ndio biashara iendelee salama, lazima ashukishe mafuta. Hata sisi kama mechanic kazi iko chini kabisa.
Na sinaona mafuta ilipunguzwa jana sana. Unaonaje maoni yako venye mafuta ilipunguzwa bei jana, biashara aje?
Kupunguza hajapunguza, one bob hajapunguzia afanye biashara ni. Njua sisi kama wafanyikazi mechanics, sisi ndio tunasuffer a lot. Kwa hiyo ndio kazi kuja hapa garage. Lazima mafuta ikuwe chini, customer ataweka magari kwa mabomu. Hakuna kazi tafanya.
All right, these are just but views of residents of Lagoon in Uasin Gishu County. And each one of them has a different expectation in regards to the 3.6 trillion budget which is set to be tabled today. Back to Betty Kiptum in studio. We shall get back to you in our subsequent updates.
Thank you very much, Frederick Parsayo. They are coming to us from Eldoret. And we have had quite a number of views from the residents saying, of course, most of them commenting about the taxation and the housing levy, just how it's going to impact them. And in studio, we want to continue with our conversation. Alex Kanyi, partner at CDH Kenya, as well as Hadija Nanyomo, the partner at Ernst & Young, are my panelists. Thank you for staying with me. You've heard the views of some of those Kenyans. What are your reactions to that? Alex, we can start with you.
I think I expected the reactions that we've just had from the public. And the reason for this is inflation. So that's quite high. Guys are complaining about the prices for food, fuel. It's basically a hard economic time. So I think people are expecting more of maybe tax reliefs or some form of pardon from the state, like what we had just before when we were just going through COVID. So you saw the government, for example, reduce the pay as you earn rate from 30% to 25%, because the government at that point realized that we are going through COVID, we need to tax people less. So I guess we haven't yet recovered fully, and if things are more expensive now than they were during COVID, then there was a certain expectation that perhaps the government would have taken that route. But again, we have to face reality. Government is struggling to finance its budget. We've had them complain about the loans that they're financing, and basically they're saying, Kenyans, we are sorry, we have to come back to you and ask you to actually give us some more if you want this country to continue running.
Hadija, you had talked about the reality even as government tries to achieve these big revenue targets. That right there is the reality, isn't it?
Yes. It's the reality, but I clearly get where government is coming from, and for them, they're optimistic that actually the overall, the arcing objective of this budget is to lower the cost of living. Now, I think that's where the problem is. The question is how. The how that is being used to lower the cost of living is the problem. Because even as we look at this year's budget, we are looking at more domestic debt at 0.52 trillion. So we are looking at external financing of 0.2 trillion, and then ordinary revenue to bring in the 2.89 trillion. Now the question is, we already over 60% of debt, and we already have a huge amount going into expenditures around payment of that debt. And again, it's for me, it's a vicious cycle, and I think we need to break this cycle. The only way we can break this cycle is to get out of the norm. We do the unusual, we start thinking about the unusual, and look clearly into the breakdowns of this. In reality, can we really get the loans? Yes, we can get the loans because we shall get them. But what is the cost of us repaying them? And what is the cost it brings to every one of us? Beyond that, when we look at improving the cost of living, cutting expenditure, but in reality, we are again increasing it, knowingly or unknowingly, then we are also looking at increasing revenue. But to me, in reality, it looks like, again, we are shrinking it. Because when you look at what is in the Finance Act, it may be very difficult to achieve that. And I think as we go on discussing, we'll unpack why it is difficult and why it may not be achieved. So again, we may see that if we are not achieving our targets for ordinary revenue, we may actually have to increase the debt. And we increase the debt, it means we are increasing the cost that goes into collecting and repaying this debt.
Alex, are you in agreement with what Hadija has just said?
Yeah, we are quite in a tough time.
Yeah.
So one, there's even a debate as to whether we are talking about a 3.68 trillion budget or a 4.43 trillion budget. And the reason for that is the differential is basically the government is saying we want to refinance our loans and perhaps get a little bit cheaper loans, yeah? And more disturbing is the fact that we have about 274 billion in the Eurobond that we need to be paying by June of next year. So the loan situation is quite something, and I guess even if it was your own house and you have all these loans that are becoming due, you will need to look for ways to increase your revenue or sell your assets. So it's a difficult situation, which perhaps even the government is asking the Kenyans to kind of empathize with. But we must also hold them accountable. So you have this 3.68 trillion budget or 4.4, whatever you call it. But then you have how you plan to spend it, the issues about corruption, the issues about budgeted wastage, the issue about expenditure that perhaps could be delayed, some travel expenditure. And we were hopeful when this government was coming, and throughout the campaign, I followed their manifesto. I followed when they came in and they said we have a 3.6 or 3.3, actually 3.3 trillion budget in 2022-2023, and we promise you Kenyans that we are going to find ways to save you 300 billion out of this budget. Did that happen? And was it actually out here to just say this is what we did about it? Perhaps we didn't have that information. So let's watch this space, and hopefully government can sema and tender, if we say it in Kiswahili. Yeah.
I think yesterday during the deliberations around the finance bill, there were some hard questions that were asked. I remember Otiende Amolo, the parliamentarian, he asked if the government is saying it does not have sufficient money, why are there 50 CASs? Why are there all these appointments, you know? And as you said, there's budgeted wastage and there's corruption as well in the government. Hadija, what are the options that the government has? Because it seems like it's a bullet that has to be bitten.
I think for me, when the door is closed, you use the window to get out. If there's a fire, the door is closed, you use the window. If the window is closed, you may even break the ventilators. And for me, I think we're at that level where we need to break the ventilators. Yes, the reality is the CASs are there are many. We have the many senators, we have the many MPs. That is the reality. But the other reality is we can actually look at things in a different way and say, okay, we need revenue. Can we collect it by first empowering, by first feeding the people who we are going to tax? Because there is nowhere, and it hasn't worked anywhere in the world, that we have so many types of taxes. We have pay as you earn, we have corporate tax, we have now there is turnover, which is suggested, we have value added tax, we have withholding tax, all this raft of taxes. Excise duty, we now have seen they are trying to bring in export promotion levy, railway development levy, all those taxes. My question, and this is to the policymakers, must they all be used? Must they all be increased for you to get what you need to get? Because the principles and the theory and the fact of the matter is, what you do to VAT will impact corporate tax. What you do to pay as you earn will impact VAT. And I can give an example here. You come to Betty, who is earning 1 million, and you want to tax her 35%. At 35%, what are you doing? What you're doing is you're reducing her disposable income. Once she gets less, she's not going to consume more. And her disposable income is what she uses for what Alex makes to pay VAT. So if you increase her pay as you earn, yes, you'll get it, but you're not going to get more VAT. You're not going to get more excise duty. You're not going to get more customs taxes. She will not import a new car if she has been importing a new car, changing her furniture, doing all those things. Now that tax may be there for pay as you earn, and if you simulate it, actually the increment is small. It's not that much. We shouldn't even be fighting so much about it. But what it means is, incrementally, it's going to affect this VAT you have projected to increase, the VAT you've moved of all these things from exempt to taxable. No one is going to consume them as much as you expect. The excise duty you've levied, no one is going to consume and pay it. So you tax one thing, it impacts the other and the other and the other. So the question is, if you look back and you say, okay, let me first enable these people who are consuming and probably either reduce their tax or reduce this kind of tax, improve on consumption, and then I collect more. I have not seen this coming through in any way in the many past years. So if what we are going with conventionally has failed, can the government now be looking at saying, okay, let's look at it this way. Let's incentivize people to invest. Let's make people boom and get profits and we tax them. For me, that's the kind of thinking I'm thinking we need to turn to. And from economics, it's what they call the Laffer curve, where you tax people less and bring more people into the tax bracket so that you get more.
Increasing or rather expanding the tax bracket.
Yes.
Alex, how is this supposed to be done?
I think it's a debate that has been going on in terms of how many of us actually pay taxes. If you look at it from a pay-as-you-earn perspective, I guess you have about 3 million people who are contributing to pay-as-you-earn. If you look at businesses, I don't know what the number is, but basically the point has been very few of us actually paying taxes. Very few Kenyans are paying taxes. And the government is trying to look at the informal sector to increase its tax base. So basically get the mamambogas, get the guys who are running hardwares and other shops to also pay their taxes, get guys in Gikomba also to pay their taxes. So that is one of the things that the government is trying to do to make sure the informal sector is roped in. The other thing that the government is trying to do, and I'm not speaking for the government, is what we call the electronic tax invoice management system. Basically to make sure that when I issue an invoice, that invoice is linked to a KRA system, and therefore KRA is able to track on real-time basis who is trading what and at how much, and therefore at the end of, say, the tax period, also check whether this person is actually accounting for their taxes. So that is another measure that KRA is coming up with. The other one is, and you may have heard this being reported, is they want to invest in intelligence. And basically there is even a budget for it, to basically get people, investigate people who are not paying taxes, and perhaps bring them as well to the net. Yeah.
Right. I'm informed that Abdiaziz in Parliament has a conversation for us. Abdiaziz, you want to speak to the Senator of Embu County on his views and expectations on matters of the budget. Abdi, over to you. Well, we are getting ready to join our reporter Abdiaziz Hashim, who is standing by in Parliament there. He and the rest of the team are following up on proceedings there. Of course, they shall be giving us a detailed coverage of the budget proceedings once the Treasury CS and Njuguna Ndung'u will be presenting there in the afternoon. Abdi, you want to speak to the Embu Senator? Kindly go ahead.
Munyi, Mheshimiwa, karibu sana, and of course, given that sawa,
nitaongea Kiswahili.
Haina shida Mheshimiwa, you can speak Kiswahili. Of course, we're still here at Parliament precincts giving you the wall-to-wall coverage of the budget. Of course, Kiptum, you can hear the discussions going on there in the studio in regards to this particular unpacking of the 3.67 trillion budget. Right now, joining me is none other than the Embu Senator, that is Mr. Alexander Munyi. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana. Of course, we do know that you're very well conversant in Kiswahili, so you can carry on with Kiswahili. But of course, Mheshimiwa, we have seen that Devolution was supposed to receive over 400 billion in this particular budget, but instead it has only received 385. Are you content with that as a senator of Embu?
Mimi nakubaliana na hiyo, na sio mimi peke yangu, ni maseneta wote wale walipitisha hiyo, ni maseneta wa Kenya Kwanza na wale wengine wa chama zile zingine, kwa sababu governors walikuwa nataka ile pesa inaweza kuwafanyisha kazi iwe nzuri, walikuwa nataka 425 billion. Na wakati tuliangalia ikawa hiyo pesa haingeweza kupatikana, sisi tulikuwa nataka kuwapatia 407 billion. Na wakati pale tukigangana tukaona hata 407 kuwapatia haitawezekana, mwananchi ataendelea kuumia, ingawa hizo ndio wangetaka. Lakini ukikumbuka serikali ambayo iliyopita ilikuwa imepatia governors 370 billions. Sisi tukaona ile pesa inafaa tuongezee 15 billion ikuje 385 billion. Ingawa wako na mahitaji nyingi, tukaona hakuna, ndio tuweze kumaliza mandeni ya counties, tungewapatia 425 billion ambayo matarajio yao kila wakati yote wakienda kupanga budget, hakuna wakati ndeni itaisha na deficit hakuna wakati itaisha. Sasa tukaongea na Treasury na pia wale wanasambua mambo ya economy, wakasema ile pesa inaweza patikana ni 385 billion. Pia nitaka nikwambie hata hizo pesa si ati siko, ndio unaona hata tax collection inaenda juu, ndio hiyo pesa ya devolved government iweze kupatikana hiyo pesa. Kwa hivyo hiyo pesa ndio intulipitisha na tukaona ndio inaweza kuangarau iweze kupatikana.
Yeah. And of course, we do know that the county governments as well as the national government met with the president discussing this particular issue. Of course, we saw the IBEC meeting between the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and the Council of Governors as well in terms of that particular money. Has Treasury first of all dispersed the money that you had agreed initially?
Kulingana vile kuko si ati ndio walikubaliana hawakukubaliana vizuri, lakini vile ilifanyika ni kukuta serikali ya Kenya Kwanza wakati iliingia ilikuta ndeni siko nyingi na watu wanasahau kunjua serikali ya Rais Moi na serikali ya Kibaki na serikali ya Uhuru iliwacha ndeni nyingi sana, na kwa sababu serikali ya Kenya Kwanza haitaki aibu ndio umekuta mambo mingi inafanyika ya tax kwenda juu ndio waweze kulipa mandeni na ndio pia iweze kufanya kazi katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza unakumbuka ilipatia youth na watu wale wengine department zote expectation nyingi siko juu na ndio wafike hapo mpaka tungepitiza hiyo pesa na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza haitaki hivyo. Kwa hiyo unakuta kuna shinda. Kwa hiyo budget ile iko ndio unaona hata usuru inaenda juu.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. That is Senator of Embu, Mr. Alexander, giving us insight of what is going to transpire here at Parliament buildings. We do know that the senators will also have their say on the 3.67 trillion budget when it is brought before them. Of course, back to you, Kiptum. We're still keeping an eye on a Parliament building.
That is Abdiaziz Hashim coming to us there with the Embu Senator, just discussing what he's expecting. Of course, there will be a joint sitting between Senate and Parliament this afternoon at the Parliament buildings when the Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u will be presenting those particular estimates. And just to get more views from Kenyans, we want to go to Mombasa County where our very own Junei Karisa Mbele is on the ground. Junei, tell us, what are Kenyans saying about these numbers? We want to join Junei Karisa to just give us the views of Kenyans from Mombasa County on matters the budget and what they are thinking about the numbers, 3.6 trillion shillings. Junei?
Good morning, Betty. We are in Mombasa, the streets of Mombasa, trying to talk to the residents on their expectations, of course, and their reactions to yesterday finance bill that was passed. Let me start with Bwana Samuel. Karibu sana. Songea tu hapa karibu. Tueleze jana, usijui angalia tu kamera. Jana uliangalia kuhusu finance bill. Tueleze mtazamo wako, na leo pia bajeti itasomwa. Matarajio yako pengine ni yapi? Tunakaa vizuri.
Sisi
anza na majina mawili kwanza.
Kwa majina langu naitwa Samuel Okothkwama. SOK. Mimi kwa majina naitwa Samuel Okothkwama. Mkazi wa Mombasa. Eneo la Kisauni constituency.
Jana uliangalia hapa pengine wabunge wakipitisha finance bill, na mtazamo wako ni upi?
Niliona vile wanapiga kura na sikujua matarajio ya wananchi wameweka kando ama watatimiza ahadi yenye waliahidi wananchi, maisha yatakuwa bora zaidi. Sasa sisi ni wananchi, sisi tunangoja vile viongozi watafanya. Kwa sababu hiyo ni finance bill, wanasema hawana pesa mpaka wa tax watu ndio wapate pesa ya kurun the government, or else Kenya na sink down. Sasa vile waliamua, wamejua wanaamua nchi si wa yao, ni ya watu, wanaamulia wananchi kwa hisi maisha mazuri. Kama ni mbaya au pia wataangamia. Kama ni mazuri, kila mtu ataenjoy.
Leo serikali ya William Ruto itaweza kupeana bajeti yake muda kuanzia leo afternoon, lakini pesa nyingi pengine zimetengewa sekta ya elimu. Wewe natumaini mzazi, je, unaipokea vipi swala hili?
Wametengemeza pesa za elimu ikuwe free education.
Hapo mpaka kamati ile ikaweze kukaa chini na kuelewa vile pesa itakavyoenda, lakini ni vipengele gani ama sekta gani pengine unaona kwamba bajeti hii inafaa kulemea zaidi?
Sekta ya afya wape pesa, sekta ya elimu wape pesa. Hizo sekta mbili na security, hizo sekta tatu inatakana wapewe pesa nyingi, kwa sababu hizo ndiye uchumi ya nchi. Watoto wakisoma wataongoza hii nchi hata baada ya miaka 100. Lakini if they are not learned people, Kenya will be ruled by fools. Ndio sahihi tunaangamia kwa sababu waanzilishi hawakuweka maneno mazuri ya kusaidia nchi. Sasa sahihi ni kubatisa, hata wabunge wanabatisa.
Kwa ujumla hali ya kiuchumi hapa katika kaunti ya Mombasa ama Kenya kwa jumla waionaje? Hali
ya uchumi ni mbaya sana. Tangu nizaliwe naelekea miaka 50 sijawahi kuona sukari kilo moja inakuwa 200 na ilikuwa inachezea hapa 100 kurudi chini. Sasa sahihi ni watu wanalia, kilio mingi na kusiaga meno.
Asante sana. Wacha nipate maoni ya Bwana James. Karibu sana. Wewe natumai ni mzazi. Leo serikali ya William Ruto itakuwa inawasilisha bajeti yake pale katika maeneo ya bunge, na sekta ya elimu imepewa kipaumbele. Wataweza kuwekeza pesa nyingi pale katika bajeti. Kama mzazi unalipokeleaje hili swala?
Asante sana.
Kwa majina unaitwa nani?
Kwa majina naitwa James Morara, ni mkaaji wa Mombasa. Asante kwa fursa hii ya kutoa maoni yangu. Haswa kwa upande wa elimu, naona kwamba serikali imefanya jambo zuri kwa kuongezea fedha katika hiyo sekta ya elimu ili wanafunzi wapate fursa ya kupata elimu, haswa katika hii elimu ambayo ni hii elimu mpya imekuja, mfumo mpya.
Pengine gani pengine vimeweza kuwakera nyinyi kama wazazi ambapo mnaona serikali ikiwekeza zaidi itakuwa inawasaidia?
Kwa hakika ni kwamba huu mfumo mpya kwanza unahitaji fedha nyingi, kwa sababu unaona wanafunzi wameingia wengi masomoni, madarasa yanahitajika, viti zinahitajika, walimu pia. Tunaomba kwamba serikali iweke pesa itenge pesa za kutosha ili waajiri walimu wa kutosha ili wapate kufundisha wanafunzi.
Pia matarajio yako pia kwenye bajeti, natumai wewe ni mfanyabiashara wa kazi ndogo, lakini wewe unaonaje hali ya maisha kwa sasa, na pia kwenye biashara yako changamoto gani pengine unapitia ndio uone kama serikali inaweza kuwekeza katika sekta yako?
Muda huu hali ya biashara imekuwa duni sana kwa sababu wananchi hawana hela mifukoni, na tunaomba kwamba serikali iweze kuweka mikakati maalum ili ushuru ushukishwe wa bidhaa nyingi, haswa zile zinahusiana na wananchi kama chakula, mafuta, ili wananchi wapate kupata hela ili wawe na nguvu za kununua bidhaa.
Kuna pendekezo kuwa gesi ambayo tunaitumia kule nyumbani huenda kwamba serikali ikapunguza ile ada. Unaonaje swala hili? Na pia najua wengi walitarajia bidhaa ziweze kushuka, lakini rais amekuwa akisema kila siku kwamba anapunguza ile bei ya kuweza kuproduce hivi vitu ili kuona kwamba maisha yanaweza kusonga chini. Nyinyi mlikuwa mnatarajia yapi? Je, mnataka hiyo ada ya gesi shuke ama ni mambo gani ambayo mlikuwa mnatarajia yaweze kushuka?
Gesi kushuka ni jambo zuri sana, ushuru ushukishwe ili wananchi wapate kujimudu kununua gesi, lakini inajulikana kwamba wengi wa wananchi wa Kenya ni wale wa hali ya chini ambao hawawezi kuafford kutumia gesi. Kwa hivyo tungependa kuomba serikali ipunguze ushuru wa mafuta ya taa ili wananchi wa kawaida wa chini kabisa, wale mahasla, wapate njia ya afford kununua mafuta taa.
Pengine jumbe yako tu kama serikali na kuangalia sahi, ungewaambiaje matarajio yako kwa bajeti na hali ya kiuchumi?
Matarajio yangu ni kwamba serikali ipate kuangazia sehemu kama 4 ambazo zinahusiana na mwananchi, ambapo ni hali ya uchumi wa mwananchi kifedha, waangalie hali ya chakula, bei ya chakula ishukishwe chini, waangalie mafuta ishukishwe chini ushuru yake, waangalie hali ya kazi, vijana wengi hawana kazi, serikali itafute mbinu kupata ajira, na mambo ya elimu pia iangaliwe, na afya, sekta afya.
Asante sana Bwana James. Sijui kama jana uliweza kuangalia mswada uliopitishwa na wabunge pale bungeni kuhusu masuala ya mgao wa pesa. Tuelezee tu ulikuwa unatarajia nini, na leo serikali ya William Ruto pia itakuwa inawasilisha bajeti yake pale katika maeneo ya bunge. Matarajio yako pia ni gani? Anza na majina yako.
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Silas Kazungu na mkazi wa Mombasa. kutoka sehemu za Mikindani, na pia ni former aspirant katika chama ya DP. So ni kweli niliweza kuona jana wabunge wakijadiliana kuhusu finance bill, ambapo tuliona wale wengi walipitisha 81 out of 176. Wale 81 walipinga, 176 wakaiunga mkono. Mimi nataka kushukuru kwa sababu pia kuna baadhi ya mambo ambayo yamekuwa considered pale, kuna mengine yamekuwa amended ambayo yalikuwa yamewekwa kule nyuma na wameweza kuangalia. Japokuwa tunajua kwamba huwezi kuridhisha kila mtu. Katika hali ya watu 4 watatu utaona unaumiza wawili na wengine unawapendeza. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka tu kusema kwamba katika ile finance bill ni kweli tunalia, lakini kuna mazuri pia na mabaya yake. So kama tukae tukiangalia, kwa sababu pia serikali inahitaji fedha ya kufanya miradi yake, na serikali hakuna mahali pengine inatoa pesa kwa mfuko wetu. So maybe we should just be positive, tuangalie vile kutaenda, na sote tunaishi nchi, hakuna mtu ambaye anakimbia.
Watu wanalia sana kuhusu hali ya kiuchumi kwa sasa. Kuna vipengele kadha wa kadha ambavyo serikali inaona kwamba ikipunguza pengine hali ya maisha itaweza kupungua. Pia mgao wao katika sekta ya elimu umepewa kipaumbele. Maoni yako ni yapi, na pengine ni vipengele vipi vingine ambao unaona kwamba wanaweza kuviangalia?
Ya hali ya uchumi kila mtu analia, na lazima pia tujue tulianzia hapo tukafika hapo kivipi. Tumetoka kwa crisis kwa mambo mengi, kama mambo ya mvua, ndio sasa tunaanza ku-experience mambo ya chakula. So tunaelewa kwamba hata sisi nchi yetu inategemea unyeshe, chakula kipatikane. So hii hali ya kwamba uchumi kweli uko mgumu, lakini mimi kama binafsi labda ningeambiwa nitoe mapendekezo yangu kuhusu tu ile bill, kwa sababu watu wengi wamelia kuhusu tu zile nyumba kwamba tunatoa pesa na zile nyumba hautazipata. Mimi ndio naweza kulia tuna rais kama wanaweza angalia njia nyingine, lakini mambo ya kusema tutakata pesa kwa sababu ya nyumba na mwananchi mwenyewe ndio mwenye mshahara mdogo, mimi nilikuwa naomba kama hiyo inaweza tu ikaondolewa, tuangalie yale mambo mengine, lakini mambo ya nyumba tujijengee wenyewe.
Asante sana. Kwa kiufupi tu tukimalizia, unaitwa nani, na kwa kiufupi nipatie tu mapendekezo yako mawili matatu?
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Samuel Kilobo, mkaaji wa Kisauni katika jimbo hili la Mombasa ama kaunti ya Mombasa. Kusema kweli, Mwenyezi Mungu ndio huchagua kiongozi, na hawezi kukuchagua kiongozi kama hawezi kukupa werevu, mpaka akupe akili ya kuongoza wale watu ambao wanaongoza. Kwa mfano katika Biblia tuko na Musa aliongoza wana wa Israeli na wakafaulu. Na sioni kama Mheshimiwa William Ruto ama Dr. William Samoei Arap Ruto anaweza kuwa hana ufahamu anafanya kitu gani. Ni sisi wenyewe walioko chini na masomo ya chini na huko chini ndio tunapiga kelele. Uchumi umeharibika dunia nzima, global, not Kenya alone. Nimeshuhudia hataki wakinunua mkate dola 1.5, na hapa Kenya mkate ni shilingi 70 na bado tunalalamika. Nimeshuhudia shida nyingi sana duniani ya leo. Mambo ya njaa yako dunia nzima. Tunashukuru kwa sababu tuko hai, nchi yetu haina furugu ya kisiasa, tunaishi vizuri, lakini uchumi uko chini, isipokuwa ni dunia nzima. Na hii dola mahali imefika 150, wananchi wa Kenya wangekubali kusubiri kwanza 2 years after election. Ndio sasa tu na ule uvumilivu, tuone baada before election, 2 years to election, Mkenya atakuwa anaishi maisha gani. Kwa sababu sasa tukipika makelele is very hali, kwa sababu serikali ambayo imeingia katika uongozi nina hakika 100% ilikuta hakuna pesa katika treasury na hakuna kitu chochote. Tungefanya nini? Na rais aliyeko mamlakani angefanya nini? Ni kuchukua akili yake ile ambayo ako nayo, aunganishe wa Kenya pamoja, na tuwe na familia, tushukuru na tuangalie miaka 2 ijayo tutakuwa na namna gani katika maisha.
Asante sana. Pole kwa kukatiza kwa sababu ya muda. But Betty, those are sentiments of the residents of Mombasa County. Most of them are small, medium business owners here at along the streets of Mombasa, and they keep on closely following up with the events that are happening in Nairobi and inside Parliament concerning the cost of living and the livelihood. So those are the sentiments that we are prepared for you. Of course, we will be here the whole day to just give you some reactions on the budget that is expected to be delivered later on today. But for now, I hand it back to you. I'm Jenny Karisambela.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Junei Karisa, coming to us from Mombasa, of course, sampling views from Kenyans on what they think about the budget, and some have commented about the finance bill. There's one who has been positive about that. He has said that the government needs money to ensure that development happens within the country, and the only way they can do that is through taxation. Now, I have a very able panel in studio: Alex Kanyi, partner at CDH Kenya, and Hadija Nanyomo, partner at Ernst and Young. Thank you very much for staying with us. Let us talk about, we were talking about expanding the tax bracket. And also, there is the issue of increasing incomes. I think for most Kenyans, especially the salaried Kenyans who this bill is targeting in a way, there has not been an adjustment on inflation on their salaries for a very long time. Is there anything that can be done to increase the income of Kenyans? Start with you, Hadija.
I think that's a tricky one, because the mandate of increasing income are our employers. But maybe government would looking at a minimum wage for those who are really low, and also instituting laws that protect employees. For instance, is there a law within the Employment Act that allows employers to, allows or restrains employers from every year not increasing the salary of employees based on the inflationary rate? Okay. But again, if you go into that, Alex is a lawyer. He will tell you that there will be some, constitutional human rights that may be infringed on, because I may be a person who is, I may be the one as an employer who will say it's up to me. And after all, if you want me to increase the pay of the employees, you need to do certain things for me as an employer. Reduce my income tax rate. Reduce the VAT rate. So that one is a bit hard, but I think what government can do is to ensure that probably they do what they have in their means. For instance, the issue of payee bands. When you look at how the payee bands in Kenya run, they're a bit haphazard. You have a 10%, and you have certain bands for that. The threshold itself is 24,000. It has never moved forever. And you can ask yourself, okay, how many people are earning less than 24,000? Meaning the people who are relieved. Then if I'm earning 25,000 and I'm going to be slapped with a 10% tax, why not even say I'm going to negotiate for a 24,000? You know, and I don't go through all those motions and everything. So for me, I think the best way to increase income is to relook at the whole band structure, relook at the rates, so that we ensure that employees get disposable income that they can spend, so that government can get what we call indirect taxes. And from economic theory, a government can better grow by indirect taxes, taxes that one may not feel. When I buy a bottle of water, I'm not thinking about tax, I don't even feel it. But when you touch my payslip and you tax me, and I know that I am earning 100,000, but 30,000 has actually gone to the taxman, it may hurt me more than when I go and I buy a house and in there that 30,000 is hidden. I will not feel it. So I think the government needs to go back to the drawing board and look at all stakeholders involved and how to get to that. I think for me that may work with the issue of increasing income and ensuring that people's cost of living is a bit more palatable and better. Yeah.
Alex, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Adija has covered it from an employment perspective. The other perspective is then for those who are in business. What the government should do is actually facilitate business. Make sure that this person is able to wake up, do clean business, make a lot of money, and pay their taxes. And I'll give you examples. You have your mama mboga who perhaps doesn't have a shed. They need a proper shed at a clean place to be able to do their business. They want access to water to be able to do their business. Yeah, so you need to facilitate that so that they can make you some money and then you can tax it. If you look at the boda guys, you want to make fuel a little bit cheaper for them so that they're able then to do many trips, and once they make the many trips, they pay their fair share of taxes. Yeah. So if you're looking at where we are spending our money, So you're looking at income and also where we are spending our money. So make sure that education, as an example, is affordable. Make sure that healthcare is affordable. Make sure that our roads are passable. Make sure that our, things to do with housing is affordable, and not to say that the housing fund is the approach. Just make sure that where I spend my money then is actually value for money. I think Kenyans want to pay taxes, but they also want to see the services that follow those taxes. People will be happy to contribute more if they are feeling the value that the government is giving them. So if I'm happy to take my kids, for example, to a public school, I'm happy to take them to a public hospital, I'm happy to use roads and, I won't get stuck somewhere because I've hit a huge pothole that you can almost plant a banana tree. Then I will be happy then to pay the taxes because I can see the value of the taxes that I'm paying. But again, Kenya is still developing as an economy. I hope we will get there. And if government focuses on making sure that the Kenyans are happy to pay taxes, then they'll get the revenues that they are looking forward to.
Let's talk about a very big part of the finance bill, the VAT on fuel, the increase from 8% to 16%. This is Kenya Kwanza's first budget in government. And part of their promise was to alleviate the suffering on hustlers and, improve the living standards of hustlers. When you look at this particular bill, the VAT on fuel, this is definitely going to have a ripple effect across the economy. I'll start with you, Hadija. What are your thoughts on the impact of the increase in VAT on fuel?
I think I have a lot to talk about this VAT on fuel because it's an area that I'm passionate about, and gladly so, because it's the engine of everything. Nothing will move without fuel. So you have to be very, very careful when you're looking at how you manage this. If you go and say you're exempting LPG, liquid petroleum gas, from VAT, and then you're applying 16% VAT on fuel, it's sort of like a zero-sum game. Because me, who is supplying the gas, I'll need transport, I'll need fuel. And the person who is giving me that fuel and that transport, they've already been hurt by a 16%, so it's going to be moved to me. So as we set these laws, especially now this one on petroleum, we needed to be very careful what impact it will have. I'll give a few impacts that it will have. The first one is on benchmarking. When we look at other countries, the neighboring countries, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Tanzania, there is no VAT on petroleum products, what we call the white petroleum products, the BIK, that is kerosene, AGO, diesel, and then PMS, the petrol. There is no VAT on them. And worldwide, from best practice, there is a reason why VAT is not included on such products. Reason being that VAT is a tax that targets the final consumer. Fuel is purely for final consumers. So if you apply VAT on it, you're touching that. And there's a reason why all petroleum products worldwide are attracting excise duty only. They don't attract import duty in case it is imported. It is only excise duty. And the reason for that is that excise duty is imposed on those products that have an environmental or harmful effect. Petroleum does that. So rightfully so, they put excise duty on it to deal with that issue of externalities, which is the harmful issues that come with consumption of fuel. So for me, I don't think it is right for us to even think of the 16%, let alone the 8% we had. I had a committee representative commenting that one of the reasons that compelled them to really look at it and say it will pass is the fact that the people who are supplying the fuel have been paying 8% and they are claiming input VAT at 16%. I feel for me that's not an issue because the 8% that they've been paying is actually not their tax. The 16% they are claiming is their tax.
All right. Let me just stop you there. We would like to go on a quick commercial break to pay our bills. When we come back, this conversation continues. Do stay with Channel 1.
na pato unakuja na hizo ndefu hapa hivi. Na wao uliambiwa uchukue litaya na pato huko hapa. Sisi unakoja nini? Sioni kipula mheshimiwa.
Mimi najuaje?
Ndio nakwambia vile kulingana na vile mimi namchuanga.
Na kierere ni nini kuleta kotini?
Ati kierere. Punguza mdomo. Toa hizo nini kwa serikali niweke kwa kunia zake mheshimiwa.
Tunasema mimi naibiwa. You also a thief because you condoned. Ulijua fertilizer inaibiwa.
Ndio huyu hapa mheshimiwa.
Hapa
ule jamaa ambaye kuajiri. Ndio huyu mheshimiwa huyu hapa. Wewe.
Yuko wapi? Mimi sioni.
Ndio huyu.
Give you a job in Matunda.
Is you because you are the one you pick it you and you bring me inside your job.
Hiyo kisungu yako.
Hiyo kisungu imekuwa moto, si ndio?
Moto gani? Naweza taka nini aso?
Tutajuaje?
Yaani hata uwezi jiambia kuwa waweza tafuta kijimtu. Watu wengi hawana kazi huko nje. Waweza tafuta kijimtu kikafanya hii kazi tukamlipa.
Nashuku mume wangu amekufa.
Amefanya nini?
Amemuua.
Pato. Umeelewa tu, you are drunk as usual.
Nini kimewaleta kwa nyumba yangu?
Tumeambiwa kwamba kuna mtu ameuawa. Yuko wapi? Na hii si ni nyumba ya mzee Mapapa.
Wewe ulisema hiyo dawa niweke kwa chakula sio kwa juice. Na mimi hiyo shughuli ilikuwa nianzie leo.
Sawa, kama sio basi ni nani?
What if he's not really dead?
He'd be very shocked to see his greedy brothers.
I'm not dead, Alice.
You are to me. Do you think Dad had a will?
Of course he did.
Na kila mtu anajua nini anapata. Na will ilikuwa ni ya watoto.
Iko wapi hiyo will?
Sasa ona aibu. Joel akiamka sasa hivi atafikiria nini juu yako?
Mom needs you guys now.
You know, right now she's very vulnerable and gullible, I must say.
I need you to do everything in your power to get back with him.
What's in it for me?
Getting your husband back, of course.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally is set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the 7th leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vanpera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring you the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Thank you very much for watching KBC Channel 1. It is budget day and we have a very special coverage of that particular budget. Remember that at around 2:30 p.m. the Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u is expected in Parliament to present the budget estimates to Parliament. Now, we have been having quite a conversation in studio talking about what exactly that 3.6 trillion shillings budget entails and why, or rather who it is favoring in terms of allocation. And we just want to go to Treasury building. Nduta Mukami is standing by there to give us just what the mood looks like before Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, Treasury CS, walks out in the afternoon. Mukami?
And a very good morning to you, Betty Kiptum. A very good morning to you, Betty Kiptum. We are coming to you live from the National Treasury, and as you can see behind me, there are a couple of preparations going on as we await the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, to table the budget at 3 p.m., which is the tentative time that has been set. And Betty, if we can just indulge in some of the things that were being talked about yesterday in the National Assembly as the finance bill was being debated, we saw a raft of proposals being reduced, such as content creators who had been given withholding tax have it reduced from 15% to 5%, although they're still required to pay 30% total tax in their net expenses. And Betty, to just give you a look at what some of the citizens are saying, I do have a guest with me, and I will just introduce him and he will give us just a brief breakdown of what he expects from the budget today. Karibu.
Asante sana. Kwa majina ni Suleiman Aura. Ningependa sana aswa sana budget yenye itapitishwa, at least waangalie wananchi wa chini sana, kwa sababu maisha mahali imefika inatishia sana aswa watu. Ilikuwa kwamba maisha itashuka chini, but tunaona bado inaendelea kupanda juu. So tuko worried about that. Kama wabunge watasikilizana kwamba maisha ishuke chini, tutashukuru. So my opinion is at least ule mtu wa chini at least apate kile cha kuweka kwa tumbo, mkate kila siku, kwa sababu maisha mahali imefika iko juu sana, na si kutaka kwetu, maybe ni mambo ya nini. Bei ya mafuta ndio imepanda, na unajua mafuta ndio transport, na mafuta ikipanda obviously maisha itapanda. Na tungependa sana president wakati alisema kwamba mafuta itakuja kwa loan, then walipe baadaye, at least wangeshukisha mafuta ishuke chini, then maisha iendelee kuwa sawa. Asante.
Now, Betty, as you can listen to, as you hear what he has to say, he's talking about how he's expecting to hear National Cabinet Secretary Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, among other members of Parliament, talk about some of the measures that have been implemented to reduce the cost of living. He's talked about the current increase in fuel prices that has seen literally everything go up. And Betty, I just want to inform you that some of the things, the theme of today's budget is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that deals with climate change, mitigation and adaptation for improved livelihoods of Kenyans. And these are some of the conversations that will be ongoing today, and we will be sure to let you know as we continue updating you in the subsequent bulletins. Back to you in studio, Betty. Thank you.
Thank you, Nduta Mukami, coming to us from the Treasury buildings there. Of course, she shall be following, or that she shall be staying put until the Treasury CS makes his way to Parliament to present the budget this afternoon. We want to now sample some views from residents of Naivasha. Carol Njenga is on the ground there. What is the latest, Wairimu?
Well, thank you for joining us, Betty, right here in Naivasha. It is day 2 of the 4th Engineering Partnership Convention, where engineers have gathered here from yesterday to discuss some of the issues in the engineering world and come up with solutions that can help catapult this engineering into a greater length. Now, today is the budget day, and I know so many people want to hear about what their expectations are. All eyes are on the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Njuguna Ndung'u, to talk about the budget and to give us the figures as well as the proposals in the Finance Bill 2023. Remember, yesterday the Finance Bill did go through the 3rd reading, and today, or rather in the next couple of days, we will know how the fate of the Finance Bill 2023. And speaking to us here about the engineering and also a bit about the budget is Nicholas Letin, who is the chair of the APSEA, to talk to us about what his expectations are when it comes to this year's budget.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Nicholas Leting. I'm the chairman of the Association of Professional Societies of East Africa. where the engineers are members. We have 30 professional bodies, and I came here to really support our professional membership body, which is having a convention, the 4th convention. I really want to congratulate the engineers of Kenya, the various bodies, the quantity surveyors, and all the bodies that are associated with the Engineering Board of Kenya.
But to just cut you short, I just want us to talk a little bit about the budget, and I want to hear your expectations. I know we'll talk a little bit about the engineering side of it, but right now let's focus on the budget. What are your expectations when it comes to this year's budget?
Thank you so much. I think today is a very important day for Kenya. This is the first time when the 5th President of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, his budget will be read, and by his Minister, Cabinet Secretary for Finance, Professor Ndungu. I know the total budget is expected to be 3.6 trillion. And when I look at the budget estimates, being an accountant, there are a lot of expectations by Kenyans. One, of course, is the certainty about food. People want to know about the food, education, health, and of course, housing. The best subject of the president has been housing, and I know that yesterday there was a lot of discussion in Parliament. My expectation is that the Minister for Finance or the Minister for the National Treasury and Economic Planning will provide more resources for the socio-economic issues like health, food, and education. And being in the education sector, I think there is a lot that this country is known for. So I know that it's already said about a third of the total budget on education, which is good for this country. I also expect that the government will continue supporting the lower end of the economy. That is, they call it the bottom of the pyramid. The hustlers, as the president like calling them, so that then we can be able to lift them up. I know there is a lot of discussion concerning the taxation of people, and I'm praying that the people. I was trying to look at what happens in other countries. South Africa has the highest taxation brackets. For example, employees get it at 40%. And other countries globally. I would like to hear your thoughts on the 1.5%. I know it has been reviewed down from 3% to 1.5% housing levy. I know engineers are lightening the middle of the affordable housing program. What do you think about this levy? I think the levy is good. It will assist the country to pick up from where it has reached. We need to improve our infrastructure, and I know that the engineers will do a lot of work in that. If the resources are kept well or collected and used well, the intention is good. It will create a lot of employment. It creates opportunities for about 5 million people, especially in the built environment where our engineers operate from. And I know that generally every corner of Kenya would like to see some changes in terms of improvements. I listened to some members of Parliament who were saying, please give us food. And I think that's a basic need for everybody. So government, I think, has already done something on food sector with regard to the subsidy for fertilizer. If the grain basket of Kenya, the North Rift Valley and parts of central Kenya can grow the food for everyone today, I'm sure then everybody will be satisfied. Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas Letin, who is the chair of the APSEA, talking to us about the budget. Now I'll be speaking to the president of the IEK and also the chairman of the EBK right here to just share their views about the budget. I know President yesterday did say that he has not had their voice when it comes to this year's budget and also the finance bill. Bona Chair, if you just can join me here, I'd like to hear your thoughts about the budget and also the proposed taxation measures in the budget.
Thank you very much, Wairimu, for having us here today. As you and His Excellency the President articulated yesterday, there is a whole value chain of development which is linked to sufficiency. He gave the government plan on water supply, where we are dealing with mega dams, which will be done under public-private partnership, other dams of medium sizes, which the government will do, and the smaller dams. This water is linked to food production, and therefore farmers will stop depending on rain and go to irrigated agriculture. He also talked of how we are going to achieve the universal health care by having our medical facilities properly equipped and staffed. He talked of even us training different disciplines like medical engineers, so that they can start doing good work instead of depending on external persons. He also talked on reforms that we need to do to young people. He talked especially in graduate engineers, but it's not only in graduate engineers, it's all the professionals in our economy. We have been, the budget we have been having is to peak about 120 this year, to train and then they become professional engineers. The president announced that from next year, this number will be 500, and moving forward until we clear the backlog of about 20,000 professional engineers. All things put together, they need resources. And the resources will come through the finance bill proposals that have been made, which we want to congratulate the MPs for passing in the second reading. I think it was second reading, and the budget that will be announced today, so that those resources then can be put to roll out these developmental issues and make Kenyans live a better life. There is also the housing levy, which is a major debate, which as engineers we support, because if you take care of a human life, then the productivity goes up. People will live in decent accommodation. Engineers will come in large numbers to design affordable houses, and then they'll be occupied by these people. We have people stopping living in slums and they live in decent accommodation, and our productivity will go up.
Okay. Great. And if I can speak now to the president of IEK, I know this is a huge conversation and we cannot exhaust it in just these few minutes I've been given. I would like to hear also your thoughts about the 1.5 levy, and also would like you to respond to what President William Ruto said about engineers not having a say on what they think about the finance bill. Maybe you can share your thoughts starting from there.
Thank you so much, Rimo, and I'm happy because in any given microeconomy, it's driven by a plan. And we know the government of Kenya has a plan. This plan has to be supported by resources. So resources follow plan. And we are aware that this has already been articulated. And more specifically, we also know that in the budget, 65% of the budget is development. And when you talk about development, we are talking about infrastructure development. And who work in these infrastructure projects? They are our members, engineers. And therefore, for us, we believe that for us to be able to reach our middle-income economy, where all of us are aspiring to become, is that we have to resource the development in this country. And the engineers are going to play a very critical role in this particular regard. In terms of the housing levy, and of course the housing in general, I'm looking at the 250,000 housing that are supposed to be constructed every year. I'm looking at this as employment opportunities to our engineers in this country. 50,000 engineers will be able to participate in these particular projects, and by so doing, enabling them to be able to earn a living, enabling them to be able to gain the requisite training opportunities, and be able to develop this country going forward. So I think for us is how are we going to manage this particular fund? That is what is coming out very critically, is that if you could be able to have a Kenya Housing Fund, which is equivalent to the Kenya Roads Fund, that it is all-inclusive, that we have all professionals in this country that are in the built industry, like the QSs, the engineers, the architects, brought together so that they can be able to come up with structures that will give assurance to this country with this very good idea, so that we can then move as all-inclusive stakeholders to be able to implement the plan that the government of Kenya has in place. Thank you so much.
Now speaking to Engineer Sharma right here, I'd like to know, yesterday the President says the engineers are at the core of the implementation of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, and that is inclusive of the 5 pillars that the government is working on to ensure that they grow this economy. I'd like to hear your thoughts about your position as engineers.
Absolutely. I think one of the important things we need to point out is that engineers are just on the top of the pyramid. When you talk about housing fund, when you start constructing the buildings, the engineer is not alone. You have plumbers, you have electricians, you have masons, you have painters. It's an entire supply chain in the building sector. And that's why when we say we are confident that the building industry and affordable housing is going to be supported by the housing fund. We are saying that this is going to go a long way in addressing cost of living, providing employment, and covers the entire supply chain. And engineers are the center of this. When you talk of manufacturing, increasing the contribution of industrialization from 7% to 20%, the way the president has clearly, explained, engineers are the center of this. When you talk of irrigation, agriculture, when you talk of water pumps and dams, engineers are the center of this. But we must be very clear, it's an entire supply chain. Engineers are just at the head of the pyramid. There are so many other people, technicians, technologists, who work with engineers that are going to really benefit.
Yeah, thank you, Sham. I know it's a broad subject and we can talk about it the whole day, but I've just been given a little time. So that is it from me in Naivasha. Back to you in studio, Betty.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wairimu Njenga, coming to us from Naivasha, speaking to some of the leaders and attendees at the engineers convention that is happening there. And they have talked about the role of engineers in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda of the government, and why it's very important for the government to ensure that matters like the housing levy or support of the affordable housing is going to open up more jobs in the engineering sector. During that particular link, I think my colleague Wairimu had a slip up. She said that the finance bill had reached its third reading, and just to correct that, the bill had passed the second reading yesterday. The next stage will be the committee of the whole house that will see members go through the bill clause by clause and approve or reject each clause before it goes for the third reading, which is the final stage. And we now get back to studio and continue with our conversation on the budget and the finance bill. Of course, that is those tax suggestions or tax proposals that are in the budget to support revenue collection in the budget. We were talking about the VAT on fuel, and Hadija had given quite a good introduction in terms of just how it is going to impact the economy, and her suggestion is that we actually do away with the VAT on fuel to just inject some money into the economy. Are those your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think we should find a way to get this VAT out of petroleum products, and I'll give you a reason. So is it just yesterday that EPRA released the new prices for petrol and diesel and kerosene? So, and there was a 0.66 cents, I think, drop per liter. But let me just break it down in terms of how much we are paying in terms of taxes when you go at the pump and just get super at 182 here in Nairobi. So you have excise duty at 21 shillings. You have road maintenance levy at 18 shillings. You have petroleum development levy 5. You have railway petroleum regulatory levy 0.25. Then railway development levy 1.9. You have merchant shipping levy, this is 0.03 or thereabouts. You have import declaration fee 3.4. You have the VAT at 13.48. All this comes to a sum of 64 shillings. So out of the 182 that you pay at the pump, actually 64 shillings is tax. Now, pause there for a moment. Then the VAT there is at 8%. Now put this VAT at 16%. What that basically means, and they want actually this to take effect from the 1st of July, it means the next release we are getting from EPRA, if it has that 16% VAT, you're actually going to pay for your fuel at about 200 or more Kenya shillings. And 80 shillings out of it will be taxes. So it's not like we are not getting tax out of petroleum products. It's a lot of tax that is in there. And perhaps we should think about other ways of getting our revenue rather than just looking at the same petroleum products. So it's already too expensive. Yeah, and Hadija mentioned, and which is something I agree with, that the price of fuel has a knock-on effect on prices for goods, prices for food, transport, prices of production. So if you say that the government is focusing on empowering the manufacturing sector, and then you say you're adding VAT on petroleum and diesel, which they will use to then power their factories because we have an electricity problem, then that is counterproductive. If you say you're adding VAT and other taxes on fuel, and then I don't know if you noticed your electricity bill for last month and the hike that was there. And part of the hike, of course, will be contributed by fuel. So you increase the price of fuel, what do you expect? Price of electricity to also go up. Come a little bit lower to your boda guy, who again has to pay more at the fuel pump, and meaning the trip that you would have ordinarily paid 50 shillings, will you then pay 100? Will you even afford it, or would you rather walk? So it's something that it's unfortunate, but we are where we are. Government is strained in terms of revenue, and they see this as one of the areas where perhaps they'll get this revenue.
Hadija, the government has, or rather manufacturers have for a long time been complaining about the cost of production being high because of the cost of energy. And of course part of it is the fuel and electricity as well. Electricity is of course impacted by the cost of fuel as well. So when you look at a government that is saying it wants to increase value addition, increase exports of Kenyan products and goods, how is this particular VAT, is it not counterproductive?
It is, and if I may give some statistics around the cost of power, in Kenya, households are paying 19.8 Kenya shillings per kilowatt. Businesses are paying 16.18. In Uganda, it's 19.5 households and 14.25 businesses. In Ethiopia, it's 0.7 Kenya shillings for households and 2.7 for businesses. In Egypt, it is 3.2. So when you look at countries like Ethiopia and Egypt that are having low power costs, you can see what the economy is all about. A country like Egypt gives the electricity subsidies, they give even other subsidies to manufacturers, and here we are going into the continental free trade area where we want to all play together. So when Kenya is instituting some of these policies, is it looking at its neighbors, is it looking at where its comparative advantage falls, how competitive will it be as we look at all this? Because when someone sits in an office and we are only looking at fuel when it's at a pump without looking at all the knock-on effects that Alex has mentioned, and the people around us who are the other countries and the competition we are going to face, for me I think it may not be intended, but I think we need to look deeper, and by looking deeper, when government is making policies, I think they need to do data-driven and research-driven policy. They need to be more informed about looking from behind. Yes, someone has brought a proposal on table that VAT should be put at 16%. Can we have a team go and research? Can we have another team move to Ethiopia and see how they're doing it? Can another team go to Uganda? Can we sit and do secondary data research and find out what actual impact this will have, a spillover effect, a macroeconomic effect on the economy, as opposed to just saying, okay, when we look at producers or how much liters of fuel that have been consumed, we multiply by 16%, that's an extra XX amount of revenue, and we leave it at that. Because as we let it pass, and I'm sure the legislators have let it pass, we will see what impact it will have within a year, within 2 years on the economy. Yeah.
Right. For a government that wants to support the MSMEs, support the hustlers, what would you have rather they did?
Well, from a fuel perspective, of course, don't increase it. And that's it. And then there are other ways that perhaps government could have incentivized people in the MSMEs or in the formal sector to actually produce more. You're looking at turnover tax, which is also something that is getting increased from 1% to 3%. Even though the proposal that came out of the departmental committee was to play around with the threshold so that it starts from 1 million to 25 million, as opposed to what we have in the finance bill of 1 million to 50 million. basically get low-income earners out of the bracket so that they continue to pay whatever they pay and they are not caught by this turnover tax. Is that enough? I think it is not yet enough in terms of just the turnover tax. And even the increase, is it welcome now, considering that the reason why we got to back to 1% in 2020 through the Tax Laws Amendment Act was to cushion people from COVID-related effects. And like I mentioned earlier, we are not yet out of the woods when you talk of COVID. So the time that we're now bringing it back to 3% turnover tax, and turnover tax, to just explain it simply, is I make sales of 1,000, the government expects 3% of that as tax. I do not take out my expenses, it's just based on my sales, and that is it. So again, that would have been a good place to look at. But there are also positive things within the budget and the finance bill, which perhaps would help local Kenyans. So we've seen the VAT on LPG, or liquefied petroleum gas, which is now getting zero rated, or the proposal from the departmental committees to zero rate this as opposed to exempt. Perhaps that will have a positive effect. Then you have other things, especially for guys like farmers, whose farm inputs, the fertilizers, the pest control medicines, whatever they use to take care of their produce. There's also a suggestion to make sure that these farm inputs are zero rated as opposed to exempt. The current draft or version of the bill says we exempt them as opposed to zero rate them, but now the departmental committee is actually suggesting that we zero rate farm inputs to make them a little bit cheaper. So a couple of wins and losses when you look at it, like Hadija says, let's do research-driven, data-driven kind of policies, so that when you suggest a particular tax proposal, then you check whether it actually aligns to your manifesto as a government, whether it aligns to the consistent story that the government has been giving to ensure that the hustlers are able to do their business and survive these harsh economic times.
Hadija, thoughts?
I want to take it back to the hustlers, and I think we've really beaten up the hustlers would, in my view, be the informal sector. But then this is a very important segment of the populace of a country, because data shows that there are 10 million small and medium enterprises. That is not a joke. And when you compare that to the number of registered taxpayers who have PINs, they are less than that. They're actually like 7 million, thereabout. So if we want to turn this kind of enterprises into taxpayers, what do we need to do? First of all, we need to stop beating them up around saying that they are not paying tax. I earlier said that there is what we call indirect taxes. That hustler drinks water. In that water, there is VAT, there is excise duty. That hustler goes and buys petroleum. There is VAT, there is excise. So they are ideally not the people we think are not paying tax. They are paying tax, actually. We just need to fuel them to ensure that they consume more and pay more. A certain government can take that approach alone, and it can have more impact to say, okay, let's give hustlers jobs. The Juakalis, we empower them, we give them some expertise, some vocational training. Let's not even look at pay-as-you-earn income tax. Just by them consuming more is enough. So for me, I think if we start using the psychology or the minds to collect tax, it may even work. A simple thing like putting, let's say the way we have Huduma centers, having a center just to register and to support these people. Some of them actually, they want to pay tax. Because if you go to Gikomba, there are businesses that have a capital of even 5 million. But they don't know what to do. The tax is so complex. But if you say we are putting a tax office near Gikomba, not to harass and say you haven't paid, I'm looking for this, but to go in and train that person and say, okay, this is how you use the electronic tax register. This is what you should do here. This is how you should do it. And you're working, they have associations, you're working with their associations. I think for me, that approach, which is not less militaristic, and less combative. Just small, I think we need very small levers, very small humanitarian, simple levers that can transform the tax system, transform the revenue collection system as a whole for our country.
Yeah, definitely some good pointers there. I think it would be unfair to end this conversation without talking about Kenya's debt situation. Because according to these budget proposals, around 850 billion shillings are set to go into debt repayment. You talked about the Eurobond that is maturing in a few months. Is there a situation that Kenya will redeem itself from the debt hole that it has sunk itself into? Alex?
Well, many people say if you're getting into a hole, you stop digging. And our loan situation is not something to envy, something to actually like. So what is it that the government is trying to do? What I've seen is there is the negotiation of our loans and trying to perhaps get other loans which perhaps are cheaper, borrow from those sources, and then pay the loans that are more expensive, so that in the long term, you're actually left with loans that are cheaper. So that's one. Two is, must we always budget over and above what we can be able to take care of? Because what happens then is that we always budget to actually take loans, and that's a fact. We actually budget to take more loans. So it's a difficult situation. And when you look at we mentioned about 3.68 as the trillion budget versus the 4.4 something trillion budget. And some of it, actually about 1.63 trillion, will go towards debt service servicing our debt obligations, which is a huge sum when you compare it vis-a-vis what our total budget is. So, and we've also had the debate in Parliament. Just recently they raised the ceiling. Will they need to raise it some more? Because definitely the tax revenue isn't enough to just take care of our expenses. Time so to actually look inward, rationalize our spending, make sure that our focus is on what is productive and what is helpful to the normal Kenyan. And then make sure that then that spending is wise, make sure that it's not used up in corruption. We are not doing the 700 billion per year that is lost in corruption. You can imagine what effect that would have if just that money went to good use. Yeah. So those would be my comments.
Right, Hadija?
I think for me, my analogy about debts is interesting, because for me, I would encourage anyone to take a loan. It's a very good way of living. All of us, we need some help somewhere. And actually, the government is entitled to go and get loans even up to 70%. The question is how you use them, what you use them for, and how you negotiate them. If you look at what has happened in the past, we've primarily borrowed for long-term projects. This infrastructure, the dams, the road construction and all. But when you're borrowing for a long-term project, you in the same breath, you need to borrow to negotiate terms that are for long-term payment. But from the look of things, it seems we've been borrowing for long-term projects, and yet we are going to pay in the short term. So that hits you very hard. Then also the priorities around what we borrow for. I think there's a country in the region, I've heard once, that even had to borrow to pay salaries. If you're borrowing to pay salaries, surely, then how do you hope you're going to manage? So I think for me, it's very okay for the government to borrow, but they need to know to borrow for what use. For instance, and this may be too fictitious, but what if the government borrowed and put that money in the central bank? It borrows at, let's say, 3%, puts it in the central bank lends it to the commercial banks at 5%. Commercial banks lend it to us at 8%. What is the loss there? And they've negotiated a repayment date or a repayment period that is favorable. Everyone gains and you live well. But when you start borrowing and you're putting the money in long-term projects, I think for me, that is the problem, and yet repayment is not long-term. And that is what has brought us in that hole that we are in. Had we looked at it much deeper, and that again goes back to data and research-driven policies and the decisions. So for me, I'm okay with the borrowing. I'm okay with the people living on debt and all that. All other countries have done so. We need to improve on our negotiation skills. We need to improve on the priorities, on what we use the loans for.
The debt ceiling, of course, has been moved a couple of times, and now there is a suggestion that the ceiling is not really the debt ceiling. It is more about the percentage to GDP. Is this a solution, Alex?
Whatever you call it, at the end of the day is, are you able to service your debt? You could give it a nice name, but as a country, are you able to service your debt? If you're not able to service your debt, do you need more debt? Yeah? You don't need more debt. You actually work with what you have. It may mean that you may cut on some expenditures. It may mean that you may cut on areas where perhaps someone will be affected. But if that is the bullet that we have to bite now, let us bite it sooner, so that when we're looking forward to, it's just the first term for the government, we don't want to get worried that we've started on the wrong foot.
Do you, I see you nodding, Hadija, do you agree with that?
I agree, but I'm also looking at, we are looking at a budget for next year, which is already looking at more debt, and then we are saying we are going to have a ceiling. So I think the policies are not speaking to each other, and we find ourselves doing things in different cohorts, which are sort of like contradicting each other. I'm not even believing, that is on paper, but I'm not believing it's something that will feasibly be practical, because we will need the debt. If we need the loans, then we have to get them. So that ceiling may not matter so much, because it will not be achievable. It's already been passed, and I'm not seeing any measures that have been put up to replace the otherwise lost loan that we are going to lose as a matter of fact that there's a ceiling. So for me, I think some of the policies or the issues are on paper. They are probably more academic and theoretical than practical, and the people who are supposed to implement them may find some of them are very difficult to be implemented. And after all, we don't have mechanisms in place to make people accountable, punish them for not implementing policies. So it's all things that are a wait and see.
It's a wait and see. Well, this is a special coverage of the budget 2023-2024 that is set to be presented in Parliament by the Treasury CS Njuguna Ndungu this afternoon from around 2:30. Remember, we are discussing the budget, and we are discussing those budget estimates, just looking at 3.6 trillion shillings, what is in there, and the suggestions or the proposals that the budget has on matters taxation. We have talked about the VAT on fuel. We've talked about the housing levy and how it is going to impact Kenyans. Do stay with KBC Channel 1. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, this conversation continues. Stay with us.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
What if he's not really dead?
He'd be very shocked to see his greedy brothers.
I'm not dead, Alice.
You are to me.
Do you think Dad had a will?
Of course he did.
TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Wiki hii kwenye Mkulima tutaangazia ukuzi wa strawberry, kisha tukuze pyrethrum.
After transplanting, kwanza tunatoa maua for the first 45 days. Kwa kwanza 45 tutakuwa tunatoa maua ili ya kuweza kupatia hiyo mmea nguvu ya kuweza kutoa matawi na kuweza pia kutoa matunda for hiyo season inakuja. After hizo siku za kwanza za 45 zikishaisha, tunaanza kuacha maua sasa. Hiyo itawezesha hiyo maua kutoka ikiwa kubwa na kutoka ikiwa tamu.
Ungana nasi Jumamosi saa 10:30 hapa KBC Channel 1 kwa mseto kamili wa kilimo.
Hey, Buda. Umekamna mazawadi za mafanze? Wachana na hizi. Nataka nikuambia kwamba Dunda ndio hivyo tena imerejea ndani ya KBC Channel 1 kuanzia Ijumaa hii itakuwa ndani. Au ni aje bro?
Nakwambia maswala, michakato, habari, mitazamo, mahojiano na masuala yote ya sport unayopokea moja kwa moja kutoka Dunda ndani ya KBC Channel 1 kila siku ya Ijumaa.
Lakini yote 9 bwana, usisahau ya kwamba mashabiki pia huku nako hatujawaacha nyuma. Au sio? Zawadi hapa ni
bila
free of charge.
Yani bila malipo.
Kila shabiki atakuwa anapata zawadi. Dunda viwanjani ndani ya KBC Channel 1. Mambo moto moto, au sio?
Remember the prophecy. Chosen by the living God. It's his will, but it is not mine.
Who is this God who gives you such strength?
3 vows were bestowed upon me. No wine, no touching the dead, no cutting of my hair.
Achana na pili kabisa. Hata kataka Mungu. No means no. Anytime anatashikwa.
Babako yuko wapi? Babangu hata sijui yuko wapi na wala hata sijali. Kumbe hajulikani alipo. Kwa hivyo mimi nifanye nini? Unajua tumetamani sana kuona wakiwa na furaha vile. Lakini mimi kwa ghafla sana.
Wewe neno la ghafla umelijua leo kwani? Tia mambo yote bro. Hapo umetupambao. Una mengi ya kusema? Ama umaliza?
Thank you for watching KBC Channel 1. This is a special coverage of the budget 2023-2024 set to be presented in Parliament by the Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndungu in the afternoon. Now, a spike in the cost of food items, rent, water, electricity, gas and transport continues to exacerbate the cost of living. The latest data by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics shows that year-on-year inflation has risen to 8% in May from 7.9% in April. Ahead of the budget presentation, how is Wanjiku surviving the harsh economic times? Our senior business reporter unpacks the high cost of living.
A normal day and Kenyans are engaging in various economic activities, all geared towards meeting the daily needs. However, recent times have become hard on so many individuals.
Yani imeanzia mfuko imekwisha, sufuria ya ugali imekwisha, mpaka sahani ya mboga imekwisha. Amen. Mpaka unga kwa supermarket imekwisha.
Watu saa hii familia wetu wako na njaa, watu wako na njaa. Sukari iko juu, unga iko juu. Sasa sisi tunalia sana.
In the latest report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, prices of commodities under food and non-alcoholic beverages rose by 10.2%, and housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels by 9.7%, while the transport index rose by 10.1% between May of 2022 and May 2023, meaning 1 kilogram of sugar that was retailing at 130 shillings in May of 2022 is now retailing at an average of 194 shillings in May.
Hasara hatukuragi sana, unaweza hata enda kutengeneza kaugali na tumayai unajiekelea, asubuhi yake inainuka, unakunywa kikombe moja ya chai unatoka.
Other than meals, housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels index increased by 0.7% between April and May of 2023 due to an increase in prices of kerosene by 10.2% over the period in review, while the transport index went up by 1.2%.
Roughly per day natumia mafuta ya 500-600, then hiyo mafuta itanisaidia kubeba at least 1800 to 2000. So hiyo ndio pesa yenye nasema napataga per day. So if I reduce nikitoa expenses zangu zote, ile pesa yenye napataga imebaki tuseme ni around 800-900 hapo.
Amid all this, the public is apprehensive of the proposed finance bill of 2023 that, in among others, fronts a 3% housing levy and an increase of 8% on VAT for petroleum products, saying it will make the cost of living unbearable.
Hii nchi iko na shida nyingi, lakini nyumba si moja hizo shida. Kwa sasa Wakenya wanatafuta chakula, wanatafuta jinsi gani watapeleka watoto wao shule.
Introduction of 5% excise duty per kg of sugar. And lastly, the introduction of 15% withholding tax on digital content monetization.
The proposed finance bill is expected to generate revenue of 289.3 billion shillings and stimulate the country's economic growth by an estimated 6.1%. However, will it cushion Kenyans from the high cost of living?
Sahi kama sahi hapa niko nataka kuelekea Nairobi. Tulikuwa tunaenda Nairobi na 200, sasa ni 300. Na tunashindwa, tutakuwa tunaenda Nairobi. Kama mimi ni mfanyikazi nauza mtumba, sahi hata kuenda kuchukua mtumba inanishinda.
Hii finance bill inasema ya kwamba kila kitu itaongezwa. Bei ya ushuru utaongezwa. Na kwa sasa hivi tukiangalia bei ya vitu vimepanda juu. Na hiyo finance bill ijapita. Sasa tunawaza ikipita itakuwaje? Maisha yatakuwaje?
Regina Manyara reporting for KBC Channel 1.
Even if it was simple, 24 hours.
Thank you, Regina Manyara, for that report. Now, all eyes are at the Treasury building, awaiting the exit of Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u to head to Parliament. That will be happening a little bit later. But now we want to hear from Alan Aoko, who is on the steps of that particular building, to just tell us what is the mood and are there any activities going on. Alan?
Thank you very much, Betty Kiptum, there in studio. We are indeed outside the Treasury building, and what we can see and tell you about this particular place is that there's a beehive of activity, and most notable is the contingent of security that surrounds this particular building. Besides the security, of course, Kenyans are free to move around. We can see Kenyans driving around, walking all the way from Haile Selassie Avenue. If you're familiar with this place, you know that a lot of people use this particular stretch to connect into the city center from the outer side of the city, from the Haile Selassie side. And maybe if I can move away from a view, you can see that they are still doing preparations of the red carpet that the CS, the Professor Ndung'u, will pass through and, show us the famous suitcase. They're still sprucing up the place, tidying up the place. We also saw some painting going on, some paint jobs. It's a very tedious activity, and we can tell you that they are going to nothing to make sure that this is a successful event. What else can we tell you? We can tell you that our colleagues from other media houses, we are convening in this place, and we did try to enter the Treasury building. Reasons, he are not allowed because apparently it's a very controlled place and they're making sure that everything goes to plan. Otherwise, the cloudy weather doesn't seem to be stopping anything. Preparations are ongoing in earnest, and we are sure to bring you more details as they occur. But for now, we still have just the security doing their paces, and us as journalists making sure that we'll give you every single detail as they occur. So back to you, Kiptum. Unless you have a question for me, this is the color that you're asking for early in the morning.
Thank you very much, Alan Aoko there at the Treasury building. Maybe, Alan, before you got to that particular location, did you maybe have a conversation with any of the citizenry, especially those who could not access those cordoned streets? Did you have any conversation with them, and maybe what are their views?
Thank you for that question, Kiptum. The citizens we talked with didn't have any problem coming through here because, as we can see, they've not really cordoned off the areas. They can move freely. But the ones we spoke to about the budget of the day, they tell us that they're a bit apprehensive about what is going to happen after the reading of the budget, because of course it will go to the appropriations bill and then it will be implemented thereafter. But they're telling us that with what they've been seeing in the media, they're not very optimistic, but there's one or two who say that they're waiting, they're having that wait and see sentiment so that they can see how this will unfold. But in general, the mood is just I can say it's indifferent for now. Hopefully maybe towards the day and when the budget is being read, we'll have some new sentiment of citizens being a bit more hopeful of what is coming next.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Alan. They're coming to us from Treasury building. Of course, he shall be standing by until the CS Treasury walks out of that building, and he shall be following the CS all the way to Parliament, where he shall be reading the budget estimates and just presenting that to Parliament to see how that goes. Now, we come back to studio and continue with our conversation here. In studio with me is Alex Kanyi, who is a partner at CDH Kenya on my immediate left. And on my far left is Hadija Nanyomo, a partner at Ernst & Young. We have been having a conversation for the past 2 hours or so, and we just want to continue digging deeper into that finance bill. Of course, something that has been very emotive for Kenyans is the housing levy. The first proposal was 3%. The finance bill draft that was passed yesterday in the second reading, or rather that passed the second reading yesterday, went with 1.5%. But the catch is the 2,500 shilling cap on that has been removed. So no matter your earnings, if it's above 2,500, you will pay for that. What are your thoughts on this, Alex?
Well, let's first start from the way it is drafted within the finance bill. So within the finance bill that has been publicized, an employer is supposed to contribute 3% of the employee's monthly basic salary. Then the employee will contribute 3%. And then the way they structure the benefits is for those who will qualify for affordable homes, you get your home. For those who won't qualify for affordable homes, then after 7 years, you can get your money back, or you can transfer it to a pension scheme. Then the other promise they put there is that you shall get a return based on how much you've contributed to the fund. And then also they're asking the employers to account for this money by the 9th day of the following month. And then finally, the cabinet secretary is supposed to come up with regulations prescribing how the finance will work and how the houses perhaps will be allocated to those who will qualify. So that is the original bill. Then you have what was discussed yesterday in Parliament in terms of the changes that are being suggested by the departmental committee headed by Honorable Kuria, and there are significant changes. One is that the contribution for the employer and for the employee will be 1.5% of the basic salary. However, this time it will not be capped. The original bill has a capping of 5,000 shillings. So going forward, or if it passes the way the departmental committee is saying, that contribution will not be capped, and that will be a huge game changer. Secondly, the other change is, I believe you're not getting promised a return. The third change is they are suggesting that you only start contributing once the regulations are in place. With the current bill, we are actually supposed to start contributing from 1st of July 2023. So give and takes there. But for anyone who earns then 150,000 shillings and above, they need to get worried. Why? If I do the 1.5% of 150,000, it gets me to 2,250 shillings. But if you get slightly more than the 150,000 shillings, then you are the one who's being actually targeted, because you'll now move to paying more. If perhaps your salary is 200,000 and then you do the 1.5% thing, it means that you'll now be paying 3,000 shillings as opposed to the 2,500 that was initially envisaged. If you earn more than that 100 or 200,000, then it gets worse, because you're going to pay more. If you're earning $1 million, it means that going forward you'll be paying 15,000 shillings to actually to go to this housing fund. And remember, if you're earning $1 million, you don't qualify, because when you come to the regulations of affordable housing, we'll be telling you, by the way, because you earn this much, you don't fall to the category of getting houses. It gets worse if they then say that you won't even get a return. So its money will just sink in a hole. It won't come back to you, but you'll have helped community, as the government is telling us, because if you earn more, they actually want you to do a harambe and help the mwananchi who can't perhaps afford an affordable house. So it's quite an emotive issue, and it's coming at a bad time when the same category of high-income earners are being targeted for a higher rate for pay-as-you-earn, targeted for higher contributions for NHIF, and it's not like tomorrow, once you get the money from them, they're able to go to a public hospital and get the same facilities they would get from a private hospital. So it's something that I guess it's bringing a lot of reactions, and that is just for the people who are perhaps earning more. Even the people who are earning less are also complaining. They're saying, between paying my loans, between paying my kids to school, a public school for them, between getting food on the table, do I actually need a house? What is priority to me? Is priority more income and more food on the table, or is my priority getting a house?
Which you're not sure you will get at the end.
Which you're not sure you'll get at the end, because you can't see it now.
Right.
And you're not sure whether the funds will be put to good use.
That is, of course, another question that's being asked. Hadija, what are your thoughts on this housing levy?
I think for me, going back to the idea behind it and the objectives, I think it's a good idea. And we see countries like many GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, most of Libya, even Libya is close to us as Libya, Egypt, they all have the government providing some sort of housing or subsidizing housing. So this is not so far-fetched, and it's not a bad idea. Again, going back to how it has been, it is being planned to be implemented, and the timing. I think timing for me is the biggest. This is the wrongest timing to think about this. Probably it's a good timing for it to be thought about, for the fund to be set up and all, and for everything to start to be put in place, research, regulations, and then maybe government can say in 2 years it is going to start. I don't know if it even needs public participation, because Alex is a lawyer, he can guide us. Is this constitutionally right? But I think we saw Umtata's submission, and one can wonder, because a person who is earning 1 million, Alex has split it up very clearly that they may not even get the house. It is forceful, because I'm being forced to pay it. Then it goes back to my right, my human right as a person. Is it really right? Is it legal for me to be forced to do that? Yet I have my kids, I have my folks, my relatives, I have all these things to pay, including tax itself.
All right.
So the question is its constitutionality, the timing, and whether the idea has been well thought of.
Right. We have run out of time. I'd like to give each one of you 30 seconds to give me your closing remarks. Alex.
For me is to encourage Kenyans to tighten their belts. We must find a way to finance this budget. As perhaps government tries to look at ways to rationalize spending, the easy way out is to tax more. But to the government as well, we are all watching, Kenyans are watching. We want you to spend our money well. We want to see value for money. And once we see that value for money, we'll be happy to support you in giving you the taxes that you need to support development or recurrent expenditure. So looking forward to hear the CS later in the afternoon to see what he has for the hustler, for the common wananchi in this bottom-up economic transformation agenda budget.
Awesome. Thank you. Hadija, your closing remarks?
Thank you. I want first of all to laud the government. It's a tough time for all governments, not only Kenya. It's a tough time for everyone, and the work they have at hand is not easy. But again, I want to urge the public to be more participative. Participate, know your rights. It's up to us because we are the government. It's the people who are the government. We need to guide our leaders, make them accountable where they are not right or where things have gone wrong. And I think we shall move forward because the kind of participation, the kind of energy that the public has put in to analyze things like housing levy, the pay as you earn and all this, I think it has really woken up government, and even the committee has looked into some of these ideas. So encouraging everyone, let's laud the government, let's respect them for the ideas they're bringing up, the objectives and where they want to see the country. So I'm hoping for all the best this afternoon and the coming year, financial year.
Awesome. Thank you very much for speaking with us. That is Hadija Nanyomo, partner at Ernst & Young, as well as Alex Kanyi, partner at CDH Kenya. We have been discussing the budget estimates for the budget 2023-2024 that is set to be presented later on in the afternoon by the Treasury CS, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. We want to now shift gears to Swahili reportage that will be coming to you from Parliament buildings. I'm seeing my colleague Gladys Mungai is on standby there to give us the latest from Parliament in Kiswahili. Bizcheck, we end it here for the English for the English bit of it. My name is Betty Kiptum. Over to you, Gladys Mungai.
Thank you so much, my colleague Betty Kiptum, for that insightful debate and insights in regards to the budget analysis of the 2023-2024 budget. Our dear viewers, allow me to hand you over now to Parliament building where we have sort of pitched camp, and allow me to now transition to the Swahili version of this program. Mie naitwa Gladys Mungai. Najua hujazoea kunisikia nikizungumza kwa lugha ya Kimombo. Hata hivyo hapajaharibika neno. Karibu kwenye tamrini hii leo ambapo tutakuwa katika majengo ya bunge tukiangazia masuala ya bajeti ya mwaka 2023 mwaka 2024. Hapa studio yangu siko peke yangu, ninao wabunge wawili na wazungumzia Bernard Kitur ambaye ni mbunge kutoka maeneo ya Nandi Hills na Joseph Makilap kutoka maeneo ya Baringo Kaskazini. Karibu sana kwenye studio za KBC ambazo leo ziko katika majengo ya bunge. Makilap, nitakuwa naanza nawe, mtazamo wako kuhusiana na bajeti hii ya mwaka huu.
Asante sana Gladys. Kwanza kabisa, hii ndio budget yetu ya Kenya kwanza kwa enzi ya utawala ya Kenya kwanza, na tumeweka makadirio ya trilioni 3.6 ya bajeti ya mwaka huu, na tunatazamia kufanya programs mingi ambaye wananchi ya chini inaweza kupata faida kwa serikali yao. Kwa hii tunasema kwa kimombo, we are on a better what is called bottom up economy transformation. So bottom up economic transformation, what is called better. Hii ndio kuangalia ile maslahi, kuweka pesa kwa mashinani ili iweze kuinua uchumi, kuanzia wale mama mboga, mabodaboda huko chini, ili waweze kuinua uchumi ya taifa hii ya Kenya. Kwa mfano, katika budget huu tumeongeza fedha ya ile hazina ya NGCDF, ile wananchi wanaita CDF, kati ya milioni 25 mpaka milioni 50 kutegemea ile parameters ya kila constituency. Kama yangu kwa mfano kuna nyongeza ya zaidi ya milioni 30 ili tuweze tuangazie ile maneno ya karo ya watoto waweze kuenda shule na ile maendeleo yote ambayo inatekana huko mashinani. Vile vile tumeangazia maneno ya mahindi, fertilizer, maneno ya chai, maneno ya kahawa, ile vitu ambayo inaweza kuinua uchumi ya taifa hii iweze kwenda mbele.
Makilapa, pengine pia nipate wazo la Mheshimiwa Bernard Kituru kuhusiana na bajeti. Mheshimiwa Makilapa anasema kwamba bajeti ya mwaka huu imetenga fedha ambazo zitakuwa zinaenda hasa katika masuala ya viwanda na ukulima. Na nafahamu kwamba licha ya kwamba ndio umeingia bunge sio mara ya kwanza, unafahamu kwamba bajeti ya mwaka jana ilikuwa ya trilioni 3.3. Na kwa hivi sasa tumeongeza trilioni 3, imefika sasa trilioni 3.6. Mtazamo wako kuhusiana na ongezeko la bajeti hii ikilinganishwa kwamba tayari wa Kenya wanalalama kwamba gharama ya maisha iko juu sana, na kwa kwamba pale punde tu wa Kenya watakapokuwa wanaongezewa ushuru basi wanasema kwamba hali huenda ikawa si hali?
Asante sana Mungai. Jambo la kwanza ni kwamba this is the best budget hii inji imewahi pata, na pia programs ya serikali. Ningetaka tuseme kwamba kama bunge tulikuwa involved from the budget policy statement, tukakuja tukipanga vile ile mikakati ya serikali vile inavyotaka, na tumekuwa na majadiliano ya karibu kati ya serikali na sisi kama bunge. Na kwa hivyo hiyo hoja iliyopitishwa jana ni hoja ambayo ningetaka niseme kwa kweli itakuwa ni ile ya bottom up. Najua kumekuwa na majadiliano mengi kuhusu hali ya gharama ya maisha, lakini wakati umeexpand yale programs ambayo itabadilisha hali ya uchumi ya maisha ya watu, then iliyofuata ambayo that is the supply budget yenye tulipitisha juzi jana, basi tukakuja tukijadiliana sasa kwa ule ile finance bill yenye hawa kamati ya kina Makilapu waliweza kuleta katika bunge. Tukapiga msasa kwa yale majadiliano mengi sana yalipitishwa pale, lakini unaona kwamba karibu sisi wote kwa bunge, hata wengine wenye walikuwa kwa opposition, tulikubaliana this is a good budget that Kenya Kwanza has brought to the floor of the house. Kwangu mimi, I feel it's a budget that looks at production as a key component, yani ya kuwezesha watu kuweza kuproduce vitu. Kwa mfano, juu ya yale Makilapa amesema, subsidy ya fertilizer, kwangu mimi aswa mwenye natoka kule sehemu za mahali ambapo tunapanda. Mambo mengine ambayo ameweza kuweka pale kwa upana ni for instance mambo ya maji. Allocation imewekwa kwa maji saa hizi imekuwa expanded so that tutakuwa na drilling na kuwa na maji ambayo those areas that are able to produce, lakini wako na challenges ya maji wataweza kupata. Sehemu ambazo pia wako na agricultural regions watakuwa pia na markets, building of markets and agro processing. Hizi ni mambo ambazo katika hii bajeti ya serikali ya William Ruto imeweza kupea kwa upana, na nimesema tu hayo kwa sababu it touches maybe the region where I come from, lakini generally umesikiza kwamba CDF imeongezewa fedha. Pia mambo ya elimu katika Kenya hii, that we are going now to have more teachers. Najua these are challenges tumekuwa nazo, tuna reduce ourselves kuona tuka fuel, lakini pia tuone yale mambo mengine that contribute in having the better human resource for this country. That includes getting the best of the good quality human resource through education. Hapo tumeweza expand the budget ya mashule. So generally this is the best budget. Kitu ningetaka niombe sisi wa Kenya wote, let us support this government in implementing this budget. Najua challenge kidogo watu wanasemanga ni kwamba pengine hatuna shida kulipa ushuru kitu ama kodi. Jambo ambalo tuko na shida nalo ni the utilization ya hiyo pesa, kwamba exactly
kutokana na kwamba hofu ya Wakenya si kwamba hawataki kulipa ushuru, bali pia jinsi ambavyo pengine pesa hizo huenda zikatumiwa. Lakini kando na hivyo, Mheshimiwa Makilapa, Waziri wa Fedha Profesa Njuguna Ndung'u tunamtarajia mida saa 8 na 45 hivi atakuwa amejaa katika majengo ya bunge. Lakini kilichoko ni kwamba licha ya kwamba bajeti hii imetajwa kwamba ni bajeti ambayo ni kubwa sana, na inaonekana kwamba kwa kiasi kikubwa ushuru unaonekana kuongezeka. Tuzungumzie pengine ushuru wa bei za bidhaa za mafuta ambao unaongezeka kutoka 8% hadi 16%. Tueleze pengine jinsi ambavyo ongezeko la ushuru huu, jinsi ambavyo pengine huenda likaadhiri shughuli za shughuli za kila siku za mwananchi wa kawaida katika masuala ya gharama ya maisha.
Asante sana Gladys. Swala hilo ya maneno ya mafuta kuongezwa VAT mpaka 16. Wakenya wengi hawajaelewa hii maneno. Na hii niko kwa hiyo kamati. Na nataka nieleze, hata nikieleza kwa kimombo ndio ijulikane vizuri sana. Tunahakisha mafuta. Mafuta ikifika bahari la Kenya hapa inanunuliwa kwa dola. Nje ya Kenya, serikali ya Kenya inapeana kitu inaitwa subsidy. Kwa wale wanauza mafuta, wananunua mafuta kwenda kuuza, wanapewa ile kitu inaitwa subsidy. Subsidy ni kwamba hawatalipa ushuru ya asilimia 16 kama Wakenya wengine. Wanalipa asilimia 8. Na hiyo ingine 8 ile imebaki, Wakenya, serikali ya Kenya kupitia kodi wanalipa wale ambao wanaakisa mafuta kutoka nje za ng'ambo. Nataka tuelewane na Wakenya waelewe hiyo vizuri. So kwa hivyo it is when we import a fuel, we import in dollar and we keep subsidy of 8% so that the government will fill the gap. Sasa shida ndio hii. Kwa sababu ya ukosefu uchumi bado iko mbaya, fedha haitoshi kulipa hawa kila siku ile 8% ambayo imebaki. Sasa inakuwa deni. It accumulates to become public debt to the government of Kenya. So now what we have done is, sasa ni kutokana walipe na via. Kwa nini imekuwa kali sana? Ni kwa sababu ukinunua mafuta kwa dola na dola iongezeke. Yani kwa sababu sasa hii dola tuko karibu 140. Sasa usipolipa kwa mwezi huo na dola isonge, inamaanisha deni inasonga kwenda juu. Ndio hivyo tunamesema wacha kila mtu alipe, hata wale importers walipe asilimia 16 ili tutokane. Mafuta kiana namna hii 16%, pande 16%, na hakuna deni itawajiwa Kenya, serikali ya Kenya kulipa. Na hii deni kulipo kwa serikali ya Kenya ni ndio wananchi. So afadhali tutokane, tulipane 16%, tumalizane, hakuna mtu ambaye anabaki na deni. Hivyo ndio sababu tulionelea hii kitu ipaki hivyo. Kwa sababu nchi ya Kenya imeweza hii kwa sababu ya dola kubadilika, hiyo 8% ambaye serikali huwa inalipia wananchi ya Kenya ndio imekuwa msiku, imekuwa deni na tunalia deni. So afadhali kila mtu alipe 16. So hapo ndio tumeona ni heri tufanye hivyo ndio tuweze tuinue uchumi pamoja.
Asante sana kwa kauli hizo. Nampatie Kituri hiyo mikrofoni, namuona kidogo anamshawasha kutaka.
Unajua ameweza kueleza kweli hiyo part ya 16%, lakini nataka pia niweze kupanua mawazo ya Wakenya waweze pia kuelewa mambo mawili matatu kuhusu hii jambo ya ushuru ya mafuta increase kutoka 8% mpaka 16%. Ukiona katika East Africa, hizi nchi zote za East Africa wote wanalipa 18%. Sisi na pia hapo nyuma tulikuwa kabla ya COVID tulikuwa tunalipa 16%. So sio eti kwamba kuna jambo mpya ambalo limeregeshwa, ni kurudisha tu pale pale. Zaidi ya hayo kuna mambo ambayo kamati hiyo ya finance ndio hata tukakubaliana kabisa sisi wote kwa ile kazi ambao walifanya. Waliweza kutoa levy ya RDL, Railway Development Levy, kwa hiyo pesa, na wakatoa pia import declaration fee kujaribu kureduce bado cost ya mafuta katika Kenya hii. Tunaelewa kweli itakuwa ni a bit of a challenge, lakini nataka tujue ukiona regionally we are even much better than the other countries. Otherwise ingefaa hata tukae katika 18% penye the East African region and most of the countries of the world wako.
Jana nilipokuwa nasikiza mkijadili hoja kuhusiana na vipengee kadhaa katika mswada wa fedha, nilimsikia nafikiri ni Robert Mbui akisema kwamba huwezi ukalinganisha Kenya na mataifa mengine, wakati ambapo wanasema kwamba mshahara wa Mkenya ni pengine shilingi 30,000, na kando na hivyo ni kwamba anasema kwamba kulingana na uchumi wa Kenya jinsi ambavyo haufanyi vizuri sana ikilinganishwa na mataifa ya kigeni. Na kabla pengine hujajibu swala hilo, naarifiwa kwamba nielekee kwa mwenzangu Kamche Menza. Kamche, sijui ukiona kina nani hapo, tueleze yale ambayo waheshimiwa kutoka upande wako wanasema.
Kwanza ni kwamba kuna mambo ya usalama.
Na Captain Menza, iwapo unanisikia, naarifiwa kwamba tayari una wageni katika upande wako. Hebu sasa tueleze, chukua zamu, watueleze zaidi kuhusiana na bajeti ya leo na masuala ya mswada wa fedha. Kwako Captain.
Kama mambo ya hospitali, mambo ya barabara, mambo zaidi ni mambo ya biashara. Tunajua serikali yetu ya Kenya Kwanza ni bottom up, na yule mama mboga, yule bodaboda anahitaji pesa ya kuweza kujimudu, kwa sababu huenda sio wote wanaweza pata kazi ya kuandikwa kazi ya mshahara. So tunahitaji pesa ambayo inaweza kusaidia hawa kujimudu, na njia hiyo lazima budget iwekwe. Jambo lingine ni kwamba vijana wengi hawajaandikwa kazi. Wengi wao wamegraduate, wamemaliza chuo kikuu na wanahitaji kazi. Wale ambao walimaliza kwa secondary, wale walimaliza kwa colleges, wote wanahitaji kazi. Na hii kazi ni pesa. Lazima pesa ipatikane ndio hao watoto au vijana waandikwe kazi. Ndipo sasa hii budget tunapoona ni budget ya kusaidia yule mtu wako chini, njia ya kuweza kuimudu huyu mtu na apate kuinuka. So hiyo ndio budget maana ambayo unaona budget imeenda, haijaenda mbali, imeenda kusonga ili kusaidia yule hako chini, yule tunaitanga hustler. Wakati yule tulikuwa nafanya campaign ilikuwa inaitwa hustler. Yeah.
Lakini hustler tunamwona analia. Hata jana finance bill ikipitishwa, hustler alikuwa ni kama anasema kwa nini inapita kulingana na zile ule ushuru mpya ambao umewekwa. Ukiangalia kuna ile housing levy, ukiangalia kuna ile VAT imepanda kutoka 8% hadi 16%, ukiangalia kuna digital creators content creators wamewekewa 5%. Hao ndio hustler nadhani mheshimiwa, na ama unaonaje wewe?
Wewe wacha nikueleze. Ni hiyo ndio watu walikuwa wametumia uongo kufunza watu. Najua watu wetu kwa sababu ya shida ambayo wanayo, hawana pesa. Sasa watu wengi wanaona kama inapoongezwa ushuru, ukiambia yeye kwamba hiyo ushuru itakukonga, atastuka kwa sababu hana. Lakini ukiangalia hao watu wamekuwa wakilipa ushuru. County government wamekuwa wakichukua ushuru ya mama mboga. Kila siku huwa wanalipa pesa. Wengine wanalipa shilingi 10, wengine wanalipa shilingi 20 kwa wale watu ambao wanasanya koti kwa stages wa wafanyabiashara. Hata wale manamba wenye matatu, wale wa bodaboda wamekuwa wakilipa pesa county kila siku. Ya kwanza yao ni kila siku. Yule mtu ambaye ukiona hii bili ya jana ambaye inaenda kushika yeye alipe ni yule mtu mkubwa ambaye amekuwa halipi. Ndipo sasa ukiangalia kwa kikindani, yule anayopika mdomo sana ni wale wakubwa ambao wamekuwa wakitumia connections kwa serikali kuchukua tenda ya serikali, kuleta vitu kutoka nje, ivite port ya Mombasa na kusema nipewe kitu naitwa amnesty. Ile pesa tungepata 200 billion, yeye analipa 200 million ambayo metukata na maybe 290 something 2.9 ametukata. Hiyo ni mabilioni ametukata safari moja, na yule mama mboga amekuwa akilipa hiyo shilingi 20 kila siku. So hao ndio wametumia laini ya opposition na kulia na kusema nyinyi mtakatwa. Hata ukiangalia wakati wanafanya campaign wanasema mama mboga atakatwa, asemi yeye atakatwa. Yule mama yule asala atakatwa na asemi yeye atakatwa. Tuangalia saa hii kuna mtu ambaye aliwachiliwa na alikuwa anatakikana alipe bilioni 200 na akakatiwa akalipa milioni 200. Bilioni 200 na milioni 200 si yeye ametuwai. Tungepata hiyo pesa bilioni 200 ingesaidia watu aslas na nani na hao wote. So tunataka kueleza mama mboga bodaboda kwamba usifuate maagizo ya wale wanalia ya Nairobi.
Bajeti ni yao.
Hii wakubwa bajeti ni yao. Hii ukora wamekuwa wakiibia watu, watapatikana. Na yule atapona, tutatengeneza barabara, itatengenezwa barabara, mashule itasaidika. Pesa sahi mashule hawana pesa, watapata pesa. Wale ambao watoto hawajaandikwa kazi, wataandikwa kazi. Watu wetu wa security ambao wanahitaji vifaa ya kusaidia hata mambo ya usalama watapata. So hii budget ni muhimu sana, na nataka niseme hivi. Kwa nini hii Azimio wanalia sahi? Mwaka uliopita tuliongezea hawa. Mwaka ile nyingine na hawakulia. Na ile nyingine tuliweza kuongezea hawakulia. Ni kwa sababu wanataka kuhangaisha Rais Ruto wakati huu. kwa hii budget yake ya kwanza.
Na mheshimiwa, hata tusiende mbali sana. Hii bajeti hii pengine Mkenya angependa kujua ni sekta zipi ambazo zimeweza kutengewa kiasi cha juu kulinganisha ama ukilinganisha na vile ilivyotengewa mwaka jana. Pengine ni sekta zipi ambazo mlizozipatia kiwango cha juu?
Ukiangalia ambapo singetaka nikuse sana kwa sababu nikikusa nitakuwa naharibia waziri wakati anasoma. Kwa sababu leo ni siku yake na leo ndio tunataka tusikie sauti yake, lakini tumetengeneza budget nzuri ambayo inashika laini vizuri, na nimesema kwamba budget hii itaweza kumsaidia mtu ambaye ni mnyonge. Kwa mfano ukulima, ile mambo mengine mahitaji ambayo mkulima anahitaji kama mambo ya fertilizers, kama mambo ambayo ya kutumia kwa shamba imetolewa kwa koti. Hiyo ni kusema tu ile imepaki labda ni mafuta ya kulima, na unajua unalima mara moja. Lakini ukiona wale wengine wanasema kuhusu mafuta, lakini inalimwa mara moja. Lakini kama umepewa fertilizers, umeweza kupewa ile vitu zingine, mbegu iko chini, kila kitu ile nyingine iko chini. Nani amepata muhimu hapo? Ni mkulima. Na ukiona tumechunga hiyo mwananchi wa chini katika hii kwa hii budget kuliko hii mkubwa hii. So serikali hii ni serikali ya mtu ya chini.
Shukrani sana Mhesh, ametetea sana bajeti akisema kwamba mwananchi wa chini ndiye aliyefanikiwa licha ya kwamba kuna ule ushuru mpya ambao umeweza kuongezwa katika bajeti ya mwaka huu. Anasema mwananchi wa kawaida yeye ameweza kufanikiwa. Niruhusu nimjumuishe mheshimiwa Didmas Barasa atuweze kutueleza na yeye bajeti yake anaona tofauti iko wapi. Mhesh, pengine tukiangazia bajeti ya sasa. Leo ni siku ambayo bajeti itasomwa. Mkenya kule nje anatazama, lakini akili yake inagonga kwamba kuna ushuru ambao mliupitisha jana katika finance bill. Pengine utueleze bajeti hii iko na utofauti gani kulingana na bajeti ya mwaka jana kwa manufaa ya Mkenya?
Tofauti ya bajeti hii na ile ambayo ilikuwa ya mwaka uliopita ni kwamba bajeti hii ilikuwa inamfinya mtu tajiri zaidi. Lakini hata kama ilikuwa inamfinya mtu tajiri zaidi, kuna maoni ambayo Wakenya wengi walitoa, wakiwemo wale matajiri ambao walikuwa wanafinywa, na tumeweza kuifanyia moderation, kuifanyia marekebisho na kupunguza taxes ambazo Wakenya walikuwa hawapendi. Kwa hivyo tukasema kwamba hata kama tunamfinya mtu tajiri, tusimfinye viwango vya kutoa damu, lakini tumfinye tu hata kama anatoa jasho kidogo, anatoa handkerchief, anajipanguza, alafu anakuwa mnadhifu na kusonga mbele. Hivyo ndo tofauti kati ya bajeti hii na ile ambayo ya zamani. Kitu ya muhimu pia ambayo serikali za zamani zilifanya ni kwamba waliweza kuongeza gharama ya vipuli vya kutengeneza ndege, suala ambalo liliwafanya wenye ndege wengi wakahamisha biashara hizo kutoka Wilson Airport na JKIA wakapeleka katika mataifa ya nje, na vijana wengi wakapoteza kazi. Lakini bajeti hii imeweza kuondoa ile taxes ili biashara ya kurekebisha ndege ambavyo vilikuwa vimenawiri katika nchi yetu ya Kenya virejelee, ili Wilson Airport iweze kurejelea hali yake ambayo ilikuwa ya zamani, ili tuweze kuanza kuona ndege zikitoka Uganda, zikitoka Tanzania, zikija kurekebishwa hapa katika Devolution.
Mheshimiwa, ni swali ambalo lilijitokeza jana mkizungumzia ile finance bill jana. Kuna wale wa mrengo wa Azimio walileta swala hilo, akasema kwamba ni kwa nini ushuru wa vifaa vya kutengeneza ndege kama vile ulivyosema vimepunguzwa, na kwa nini msingepunguza basi ushuru wa mafuta ili mwananchi huyu ambaye yuko huku chini aweze kupata manufaa pengine na mapema.
Tumepunguza vipuri vya spare parts za ndege kwa sababu tunataka biashara hizo za kutengeneza ndege sirejeshwe humu nchini. Wapo vijana wengi ambao wamesomea taaluma ya ufundi wa ndege hapa katika Wilson Airport. Unapotazamia katika East Africa, Kenya is the hub of aviation training. Tuko na shule nyingi za kutrain mambo ya aviation katika Wilson Airport, katika universities zetu hapa nchini, lakini kazi za kutengeneza ndege zilikuwa zimehamisha kutoka Kenya kupeleka kwa mataifa yale mengine.
Unashikilia kwamba bajeti ni ya mwananchi wa chini?
Ni ya mwananchi wa chini kwa sababu kidogo si ni serikali ya kusikiliza wananchi wa kawaida. Tulikuwa tumeweka taxes katika katika makucha, yale makucha ya bandia, katika zile nywele za bandia. Lakini baada ya kufanya public participation, wapo warembo wengi ambao walisema nywele hii inawafanya wakuwe warembo zaidi na wapate soko ya kupata wazee, ya kupata hiyo, na ni biashara pia wale wengi ambao wanafanya. Sasa tumeiondoa ile taxes katika zile bidhaa ambazo tulikuwa tumepanga kuzitosha ushuru.
Asante sana Mhesh. Na mtazamaji, ni baadhi tu ya semi kutoka kwa waheshimiwa. Kumbuka awali nilikuwa nimetaka kujua ni sekta zipi zilizopewa kipaumbele, lakini nikaambiwa nisubiri msema kweli itakapofika saa 8 ama saa 9 wakati kikao cha bunge kitakuwa kinaendelea, ambapo waziri wa fedha Profesa Njuguna Ndung'u atakuwa anafika pale kueleza ni kina nani hasa waliofaidi zaidi na kina nani ambao wamepigwa kukatwa kidogo pale. Lakini kama ulivyosikia waheshimiwa wengi wakiwa ni kutoka mrengo wa serikali wanasema kwamba bajeti hii ni ya mwananchi, wameshikilia kwamba bajeti hii ni ya mwananchi, lakini yote 9-10 ni kwamba bora Mkenya aweze kusikia kwamba kuna ule utulivu kidogo katika maisha. Niruhusu nikurudishie kwa mwenzangu Gladys Mungai. Sijui kama uko maeneo gani, lakini usukani huu ni wa kwako. Usukani huu ni wa kwako. Namuona hapa ni naye mheshimiwa mwingine, lakini wacha nitazungumza naye tu baadaye kidogo. Gladys Mungai, narudisha usukani huu kwako.
Asante sana mwenzangu Kamchemenza, bila shaka tunakupata na tunasikia hisia na kauli za wabunge kutoka maeneo unakotoka. Lakini mtazamaji, tukiendelea hapa karibu yangu ni naye Barat Kitul na Joseph Makilap. Tayari tunaendelea kwa awamu ya pili ya mahojiano haya, na tulipokuwa tunazungumza ni kwamba kumekuwepo na pingamizi tu kuhusiana na yale ambayo yanatarajiwa katika bajeti hii. Ni kwamba kumekuwa na masuala kinzani, ni ushuru huu, ushuru ule, kama sio masuala ya nyumba ni masuala pengine ya kidijitali, masuala pengine ya mafuta. Pengine tukisikia kwako Kitur, kuna mambo mazuri tu nafahamu kupitia kwenye hii bajeti. Pengine ungeweza kuelezea mtazamaji, kando na masuala ambayo tunapata kwa upinzani unapinga masuala pengine ya ushuru, ni kipi ambacho kinatarajiwa kumnufaisha mwananchi?
Kwanza kabisa, wakati tulienda likizo, ulikuwa umeuliza kuhusu, nilikuwa naweza kutetea mambo ya VAT. Nikisema kwamba katika East Africa, Kenya tuko at 16%, lakini katika East Africa ukiona Tanzania tuko 18%, ukiona Burundi wako 18%, ukiona Uganda wako 18%. So wewe ulikuwa unasema kwamba if we do the comparison, these are the right comparisons that we need to be putting ourselves, sio ile ya international. Lakini tukisema yale mambo mazuri ambayo tuta expect katika hii bajeti, wacha niweke jambo la kwanza. Kwa mfano, mambo ya masomo katika Kenya hii. Bajeti hii wameweza kutenga pesa ambazo tutaweza kuemploy again another set of teachers, about 35,000 teachers. Mwaka huu tu hapo iliyopita tuliweza kuemploy about 30,000 teachers. So ukiona kwamba mambo ya quality of masomo katika Kenya hii, nilisema hapo awali, hayo ni mambo mazuri ambayo hakuna mtu anataka kuyaongelea kuyahusu. Tutabadilisha completely the education sector ya hii nje ambayo imekuwa challenge. One of it was staffing. Walimu wako katika mashule, watoto wetu tumekuwa tukiwapeleka kwa shule, tumeleta program kama KBC ambayo hawana walimu. Sasa hilo jambo will be addressed. Kutakuwa na vijana wengi ambao watapata kazi, wengi graduates wenye walikuwa wamesomea mambo ya walimu watapata kazi sasa katika hii program ambao government imeweza kupitia hii budget ambayo tumepitisha. La pili, kabla sijapea mwenzangu pia, kwa sababu kuna mambo mengi tunaweza yanena. Jambo la pili ni kwamba mambo yenye mmekuwa ukisikia rais akiongea sana kuhusu katika production inputs. Jambo la maana ni kuweza kuwa na maji katika sehemu ambazo watu wanapanda. Mambo ya dams, water pans and drilling of water. Tumeweza kutenga pesa mingi sana katika hiyo sekta, jambo ambalo halijaifanyika tena hapo kitambo. So hili litaweza kubadilisha hali ya mambo ya chakula katika kuzalisha chakula Kenya hii. Licha ya kuwa pia tumeweka fertilizer subsidy in a very huge manner. Sasa hayo mambo yote expect kwamba kutakuwa na mabadiliko kabisa katika hali ya mazao ya vyakula katika nchi hii yetu ya Kenya. What you will expect, what will that mean? Itamaanisha kwamba wakati then the cost of food imeenda chini, then inflation will go down and the lives of Kenyans will be much better. Of course, ndugu yangu naona hapo hakuna jambo nataka kusema.
Nilitaka nimuulize swali tofauti, manake muda unaelekea kukaribia kikomo, lakini Makila pengine nikuulize, kutokana na maeneo unakotoka, Wizara ya Usalama wa Ndani imepatiwa zaidi ya shilingi bilioni 26. Na maeneo unakotoka wakati mwingine tunapata kwamba mnatupatia taarifa za kimataifa hata kutokana na masuala ya walaghai tu ama hawa bandits kwa lugha ya Kimombo. Sasa pengine tueleze mchango wa fedha ambazo zimetengwa katika bajeti hii kuangazia masuala ya usalama katika maeneo ambayo kuna masuala ya ghasia, hasa maeneo ya Baringo?
Asante sana Gladys. Katika bajeti hii sisi kama wachumbe tumeweza kupatia Wizara ya Internal Security kiongozwa na Profesa Kindiki bilioni 26 ya kupambana na majangili ambaye wameweza kuhangaisha taifa hii na wananchi wa Kenya, hasa katika bonde la Ufa kaskazini, what's called the North Rift. Na hiyo itasaidia kuchenga mashule ya amani katika mpaka ya kukutanisha watoto ya jamii ambayo wanasosana, mashule katika mpaka ya Pokot na Turkana, Pokot Magharibi, pande wa Elgeyo Marakwet na Tiaty, pande wangu ya Baringo North na watu ya Tiaty, Baringo South na watu wale wengine mpaka huko Samburu. Hiyo fedha kwanza ni kuchenga mashule ambaye ilikuwa imeharibiwa na majangili, na in that program tuko na 100 million katika kila sehemu, na vile kulipa wale ambaye wanaitwa NBR safari watapata mshahara ndio waweze kufanya kazi kama askari kikamilifu, na vile kupewa NHIF, kwa safari kwa mara ya kwanza watapewa mavazi kama ya askari na wanalipwa mshahara na kupewa medical cover under NHIF. Na sasa ile pesa nyingine itakuwa kutengeneza mabarabara, kutengeneza mamaji, kutengeneza kuleta uwiano baina ya watu ambao wanaishi katika sehemu hiyo. For the first time we are allocating money specific to address banditry in this region and open up that particular area, so that now the people who have been fighting because of pressure for resources will be able to be addressed.
Pengine makilafu na swala la bajeti ya shilingi huo mgao wa shilingi bilioni 26. Mheshimiwa Kithure anatueleza kwamba Wizara ya Elimu ndio mojawapo ya wizara ambazo zinanufaika kabisa na mgao wa zaidi ya shilingi bilioni 600. Na unakotoka ni kwamba licha kuna swala hilo la majangili wanaotatiza masuala ya usalama, kidogo elimu kwa njia moja ama nyingine pia imetatizika. Pengine ningetaka kusikia kauli zako kama mheshimiwa unayetoka katika maeneo hayo, ikilinganishwa kwamba wakati mwingine mnaambiwa kwamba nyinyi ndio mnaowafadhili majangili kuharibu masuala ya usalama katika maeneo hayo. Sasa pale ambapo tunaona kwamba wakati huu serikali imejitokeza na kutenga fedha zaidi kuhakikisha kwamba masuala ya majangili wamekabilianwa nao vilivyo, mchango wenu kama viongozi katika maeneo hayo utakuwa upi kuhakikisha kwamba masuala ya usalama na masuala ya elimu hayatatiziki?
Asante sana. Kwanza nisema ya kwamba viongozi, mimi nikiwa mfano yao, saa zingine viongozi wanaweza kuleta matamshi ambaye inaweza kuleta watu kukosana, lakini mimi kwa upande wangu na wale waheshimiwa wengine baye tunaamini Mungu yuko na tunapendelea kuona maendeleo. Kama kwangu watu yangu hawajawahi kwenda kufanya raid, lakini we become victims. Watu ya Baringo North wameweza kuwa victims, na mimi najua wengi ambao ni victims. So kwa hivyo sisi tutasaidia serikali kuonyesha yale mambo ambayo inahitajika kufanyika ili tuweze tulete chini maneno ya banditry to a complete end. Na sana kupitia, kwa mfano nimekuambia tunaweka boarding schools along the border ambaye watoto ya jamii na jamii tunaweka pamoja. Sasa sisi viongozi tutakuwa hapa pamoja, na vile tutaongoza sisi kama viongozi katika sehemu hiyo kutembeleana, kukusa amani katika upande hizo zote. So ni viongozi tu wajaje ambaye labda kidogo wanasukumwa na watu yao kufanya vile wanataka kwa ile harakati ya kusema kuchunga kura. Lakini kuchunga kura na kupoteza watu na kupoteza masomo ni tabia mbaya.
Unasema kuchunga ground kwa lugha yenu kama
kuchunga ground.
Lakini pengine tumsishe Kithure kwa swali letu la mwisho kabla ya kumpatia mwenzangu Kamchemenza. Na hisia za Wakenya wengi Kithure ni kwamba si kwamba hawataki kulipa ushuru, lakini kilichoko ni kwamba wanahisi kwamba punde tu tutakapokuwa tunatoa mchango wetu katika ujenzi wa masuala kama nyumba, ujenzi wa barabara, pesa ambazo zinatozwa ushuru zinatumika vibaya. Ni vipi hasa ambapo serikali hii ama hii serikali yenu ama serikali yetu itakavyolainisha masuala, ndipo kusiwe na hisia za kuogopa na kupingwa kwa ushuru kutokana na kwamba punde tu Wakenya wanapouchangia kuna ubadhirifu wa fedha mkubwa sana. Kumbuka kwamba Rais Uhuru Kenyatta mwaka juzi alisema kwamba taifa linapoteza shilingi bilioni 2 kila siku.
Ni kweli kwamba Wakenya wangetaka sana kuweza kusupport nchi yao iweze isimame, ama ile programs ambazo serikali imeweza kuona kuweza kubadilisha maisha zao, lakini imekuwa changamoto kwa miaka zile zilizopita, wakati kumekuwa na ubadhirifu wa fedha ama zile pesa ambazo zimeweza kuwekwa pamoja ili ziweze kufanya miradi tofauti katika sehemu tofauti ya Kenya hii. Na hili ni jambo ambalo rais mwenyewe ameweza kunena hata wakati tumeenda katika kule Ikulu. Wakati ametuita akatueleza kuwa hii ni bajeti yake yenye ameweza kutoka, tukajadiliana. Na jambo ambalo sisi wote kama viongozi wa Kenya Kwanza tuliweza kumweleza rais wetu kwamba this is a concern yenye sisi wote tunataka kuwa pesa zote ambazo zimeweza kuwekwa pamoja ili kutumia kufanyia kazi katika Kenya hii isiibiwe. Na hivi majuzi umeweza kuona kuwa rais has been very firm. Yale institutions ambao wamepatikana na mambo ya ubadhirifu ya pesa, umeona vile rais anaweza kuwafurusha. Na zaidi ya hapo, by the way, katika bajeti hii tumeweza kuongezea fedha katika hizi institutions za serikali ambazo zinashughulikia mambo ya investigations ama economic crimes ama empowering them. Wameweza kupewa bajeti ya juu sana. Hii ni kuonyesha kwamba serikali hii yetu is committed on this cause. Zaidi ya hapo, pia katika bunge tumeparticipate katika kutengeneza hii budget, lakini pia tuko na audit committees ambazo we keep looking at the budget of the audit report ambazo tunapewa katika kitengo tofauti ya serikali, na hiyo ina involve wala ambao tuko serikali na wala ambao wako katika opposition.
Lakini
so kwa hiyo
kushinikizwa kupitisha hii bajeti.
Ndio maana tumekuwa hapo jana, tumeweza kujadiliana kwa wazi. It is the first time in the history of this country that we have a budget that every Kenyan understands budget 2023. Umaisikia wakati wa Kenya hata wa kawaida akiweza kujadiliana. Tumekuwa pale kwa bunge, we've had different views. Hata mimi mwenyewe wakati nilikuwa napeana hoja zangu, pia nilikuwa concerned katika 15% ilikuwa imewekwa katika mambo ya digital tax, na tukasema let's reduce, ikakuja 5% na finally tukajadiliana imekuja 3%. So this is the most open democratic government. Hiyo mambo ya kusema kwamba kuna mtu ambaye alishurutishwa, hakuna. Ama kulikuwa bwana Makilaba. Sisi tulipitisha kwa sababu tunapenda Kenya yetu, and this is the best budget for our country. I want to look at every Kenyan looking at me and I tell you, let us support our government. Let's support this government of Kenya Kwanza. For sure, this country will change. And in the next 3 years, by the way, hatutakuwa tukikopa tena fedha za kuweza kufadhili bajeti yetu.
Naam, asante sana kwa kauli hizo. Makila, sekunde 30 tu naambiwa kwamba nifungane na
kwa Wakenya wenzangu, ningewaomba kwa unyenyekevu zaidi tusaidiane tulipe ushuru. Hii uchumi ya taifa hii hatutaendelea tena kujenga uchumi yetu kutumia fedha ya kuomba.
Naam, asante sana.
Tunataka Wakenya wajitolee, sacrifice for your country so that we develop this country together and we stop borrowing to develop our whole nation.
Naam, asante sana Mheshimiwa Makilab. Mtazamaji, huo ni Joseph Makilab kutoka maeneo ya Baringo Kaskazini na mwenzake Bernard Kituru kutoka maeneo ya Nandi Hills. Nasema asante sana kwa utazamaji wako, na mpisha mwenzangu Kamchemenza aendelee kutoka hapa.
Asante sana. Asante sana.
nini haswa?
Tutajuaje?
Yaani hata uwezi jiambia kuwa waweza tafuta kijimtu. Watu wengi hawana kazi huko nje. Waweza tafuta kijimtu kikafanya hii kazi tukamlipa. Nashuku mume wangu amekufa.
Amefanya nini? Amemuua.
Pato. Umeelewa tu, you are drunk as usual. Nini kimewaleta kwa nyumba yangu?
Tumeambiwa kwamba kuna mtu ameuawa. Yuko wapi? Na hii si ni nyumba ya mzee Mapapa.
Wewe ulisema hiyo dawa niweke kwa chakula, sio kwa juice. Na mimi hiyo shughuli ilikuwa nianzie leo.
Kama sio basi ni nani?
The voting is over and now it's time to award the best of the best. Kuza Awards 2023 is here. An initiative by the Communications Authority of Kenya, Kuza Awards seek to recognize and promote excellence in broadcasting in the country. The awards ceremony will be held this Friday, 16th June at Movenpick Hotel. Follow this event live on KBC Channel 1 from 7:30 p.m. Kuza Awards, shaping the future of broadcasting.
The Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, KIPRA, invite to the 6th KIPRA Annual Regional Conference to be held at Pwani University in Kilifi County from 21st to 23rd June 2023. The conference brings together state and non-state actors to exchange views on accelerating the economic growth and development for arid and semi-arid lands, ASALs, in Kenya. The key areas of discussions during the conference include the following: economic system in ASALs, infrastructure development, human capital development, creative economy and tourism, governance, peace and security, natural resources and agriculture, trade and finance, and inclusive growth. To participate, visit www.kipraconference.org or call 0724 256 078. KIPRA, thinking policy together.
Huchagui familia yako, ni zawadi ya Mungu kwako kama ulivyozawadi kwao. Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB. Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
The Policyholders Compensation Fund, PCF, is a state corporation under the National Treasury and Economic Planning that was established under the Insurance Act with the primary mandate of providing compensation to the claimants of an insurer placed under statutory management or whose license has been cancelled. It was established for the secondary purpose of creating confidence in the insurance sector. Policyholders Compensation Fund, dhamana ya bima yako.
The 15th day of June 2023 it is. Good afternoon. This is the great KBC on this very great and special day. It is indeed the budget day where we are expecting the Treasury CS to present his budget of about 3.6 trillion shillings being the magic number. We expect that at about 2:30, but before then we have news making headlines in regards to the budget and other national issues affecting us. My name is Bentro Injue, and Brian Muraru will be our sign language interpreter for this live newscast. Of course, you can weigh in on the budget and other news articles that we will bring to you right now on all our social media platforms as we are live. We begin with the budget, where National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u is expected to deliver the 3.6 trillion shillings 2023-2024 budget statement in Parliament this afternoon amid mixed reactions by Kenyans over the proposals. This will be the first budget for the Kenya Kwanza administration that has prioritized 5 pillars under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
Ayes 176, the nays 81.
The debate on the proposals in the budget estimates for the financial year 2023-2024 transitioned into the night as members of Parliament on Wednesday sought to vote on the proposals.
As a committee, we listen to the members of the public, and I want to encourage the House. It will be a serious issue, Mr. Speaker, to pretend that we want the status quo to remain, yet at the same time we want changes.
We have had a mention that Kenya is not highly taxed because I think, I don't know, Tunisia, Morocco, they are taxed more, their tax to GDP is higher. How do you compare Kenya with some of those countries? The average salary in Tunisia is 176,000 a month. Average salary in South Africa is 187,000 a month. Average salary in Morocco is 263,000 shillings a month. The average salary of a Kenyan is 22,000 shillings. How do you compare light and day?
And I invite you to look at clause 8D. The national government is only to do the housing policy. So when you are bringing the question of housing and you're introducing the tax, you're actually amending the constitution through the back door. And it also means then that this bill should go to the Senate, because the Senate must have a role in anything that affects the counties.
When members of Parliament rise on their seats, telling people that housing matter is not necessary, it is not a necessity, when we all know that it is important to have food, yes. It is important to have clothing, yes. But it's also important to have shelter. And that is what this government is talking about.
According to the National Assembly standing orders, the budget is set to be delivered not later than 3 p.m. on Thursday. This being the first budget under the Kenya Kwanza administration, Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u will be delivering the ambitious 3.6 trillion shillings budget to run President William Ruto's first-term administration while maintaining a tough balancing act between debt servicing and supporting economic recovery.
I would have expected, having heard the regime lament that they found empty coffers, I would have expected, and any first-year economics student will tell you, that the logical step the regime was rationalize the budget and cut off those areas that are not necessary.
The housing levy, Mr. Speaker, is elephant in the room. Mr. Speaker, it is stupid. In fact, I don't know what I can describe, to beat a man for doing what you yourself proposed. The other side proposed this housing levy, Mr. Speaker. Now it's being implemented, and so the issue with the other side is not that they don't like housing. The issue they have is that someone else is implementing it.
The way the bill is being proposed by the Finance Committee is making things worse for the Kenyans, and this makes it a very strong candidate for rejection. So on those basis, Honorable Speaker, this bill should be rejected so that we help Kenyans improve their lives.
In the 2023-2024 budget, 1.5 trillion shillings will be set aside for recurrent expenditure. 718 billion shillings allocated to matters development. 986 billion shillings will go into debt payments. Under what has been termed as an ambitious budget, 385 billion shillings has been allocated to counties. The education sector gets the lion's share of the budget with an allocation of 604 billion shillings.
And for an unmatched budget coverage, we have our reporters in various parts. We have Alan Aoko, who is currently on standby at Treasury building, where we expect any moment from 2 p.m. the CS will be actually heading to Parliament. We also, as you can see, Abdulaziz Hashim has been keeping tabs with what is happening at Parliament, where we expect the budget statement to be read. We also have Achola Simon. As you can see, he's on standby in Kakamega, and also We have our reporters in other parts, including Mombasa. Let's first of all cross over to Parliament. Abdulaziz, over to you.
Well, good afternoon to you indeed, Ben. There in the studios, of course, we are covering our wall-to-wall coverage in terms of this particular 3.67 trillion budget that 2 hours from now we do anticipate the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Professor Njuguna Ndogo, to make his way to Parliament precincts. As you can see behind me, security apparatus have already mounted ample security to usher him into the precincts of Parliament. Of course, we are still waiting for a number of legislators to come to this particular building, given that they had run their session into the evening at 10 p.m. last night. Of course, we do understand also that when it comes to this particular bill, the executive has received the lion's share. We'll be looking into that particular deal. But right now, I want to bring on the Mheshimiwa, the Machakos Town Member of Parliament, that is Mheshimiwa Caleb, to discuss what is happening, of course, to this particular bill when it reaches the floor of the House. The Treasury Cabinet Secretary is expected 2 hours from now to make his way from those streets behind us all the way to Parliament buildings. But first of all, let's speak to Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, thank you for joining us. This is KBC. For joining us this lovely afternoon. First of all, Mheshimiwa, what million Kenyans are watching us right now? What should they expect?
Today, we are expecting the Treasury, the Cabinet, the CS, Njuguna Ndogo, to come and give highlights on the budget for 2023-2024. Yes. So the expectation is much. We have the 5 pillars of the bottom-up transformation agendas, which is agriculture transformation. We have the digital superhighway. We have the housing. We have what else? Yes. There are 5 of them. So the CS, Njuguna Ndogo, now will be coming to highlight on what is it for Kenyans, what is in the budget for Kenyans, and we'll be happy to listen. Yes.
What are the people of Machakos Town saying about this particular bill itself in its entirety?
He's coming to highlight on the budget, yes, but the bill, the finance bill, which we had the second reading yesterday, yes. And it was good. As Machakos people and as Machakos representative, I voted yes, because I wanted to have the developments. Like, for example, we saw the finance bill dealing with the education, okay, where they added some little money on it, so that we can put money on the GSS. Okay. They can put money on housing, okay, and all that. I'll be bringing an amendment, okay, before Monday, before Tuesday. I'll be bringing an amendment to ring fence, okay, the money that will be collected on housing, so that it can go specifically to housing. Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. That is Machakos Town Member of Parliament, Mr. Caleb, of course, addressing us on what amendments he'll be bringing to the floor. You do know it's not over until next week, Ben, when we're expecting the third reading of that particular bill. Once it reaches the floor of the House, of course, we do understand some legislators will be bringing those amendments to the floor. For now, back to you, Ben.
Very well, Abdulaziz, thank you so much for that. He's reporting live from Parliament. As you can see on your bottom right of your screen, Alan Aoko is just standing just outside the National Treasury, where we expect the CS to be exiting with the famous briefcase that contains the 3.6 trillion budget estimates. Alan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Troy. I see you're very excited to see the symbolic briefcase being held here. The weather notwithstanding, there has been some movement. In the past several minutes, we have seen the vehicles and the official motorcade of the CS, Professor Njuguna, just arranging themselves behind us. And if maybe I can show you exactly what that means, the vehicle that these are the indications that we're almost there, that the festivities are almost starting now. In the past couple of minutes as well, we have seen security arranging themselves accordingly. The roads will now probably be cordoned off for the procession. Remember, PS is to come down the steps of the National Treasury and take a photo with the ceremonial officials.
We do apologize for that sound hitch from the National Treasury. That has been Alan Aoko. But let's first of all cross over to Kakamega. Kakamega, yes, Kakamega. We have Achola Simon, who has been keeping tabs, trying to sample some of the responses from very anxious Kenyans. Achola? Before then, Kenyans from all walks of life were...
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nakusikia.
Achola, if you can hear me, what is the latest from Kakamega?
Well, thank you very much. Ben, Troy, Njue. We are coming to you live from Mohomo village that is in Lugari constituency, Kakamega County. And of course, we are keeping tabs on exactly what will be happening at Parliament buildings this afternoon. But more importantly also, we'll be giving views of the common mwananchi right from the village, so that then they can actually feel part and a parcel of exactly what is happening in Parliament's building. And remember, Ben, Troy, Njue, this is the first budget estimates by this administration, an administration riding on the promise of ensuring that they uplift the very low people in the society, and as such, of course, very many people across the country will be focusing their eyes on the screens and, of course, listening to videos just to get to understand what exactly there's in for them in terms of ensuring that they indeed they uplift their standard. Of course, now here where I am actually standing as a...
We do apologize for that hitch as well from Kakamega. Has been Achola Simon. We'll be getting back to Achola and Alan, but let's cross over to the coastal county of Mombasa. Junei has been also sampling some of the responses and some of the sentiments from Kenyans in Mombasa. Junei, over to you.
Oh, acha kidogo.
Jude, if you can hear me, what are people saying there in Mombasa?
Shanzu, and I'm joined by a businessman from the Mkilifi business. Here they're making traditional seats. Just to give you an overview on small-scale business people on their take on today's budget. Wacha tu utaniruhusu niweze kuongea Kiswahili tu. Tueleze jina lako na tueleze na kuona leo umekuwa mjuzi na hii kazi umeifanya miaka mingi. Tuambie tu kwa majina, tupatie tu taswira kamili ya miaka ambayo umekuwa ukifanya na mapato yako pengine katika hii biashara ni yanakaa vipi?
Asante sana. Mimi naitwa Joseph Njiro. Nimefanya hii biashara kwa muda wa miaka kama 10 hivi. Na kulingana na biashara ile nimefanya, mapato ni kidogo. Na vitu viko bei ya juu. Yaani ukienda kununua rangi iko bei ya juu, misumari iko bei ya juu. Kwa hivyo mapato ni kidogo. Hii kazi tunafanya tu kwa sababu hakuna kazi nyingine tunafanya. Hata wateja wanakuja moja. Wanaweza kuja kwa wiki, anaweza kuja kwa wiki mteja moja ama kwa wiki mara 2 mteja moja anunue kitu kimoja. Kwa hivyo mapato ya hii vitu biashara ni kidogo sana. Lakini vitu vikiwa bei imezuka chini na ameteremsha bei, itakuwa tunapata angalau bei kidogo. Kwa hivyo rangi imepanda, misumari imepanda, na ukienda dukani unga imepanda, yani kila kitu kimepanda.
Tueleze tu pengine una wafanyikazi wangapi na mapato yako unayajumlisha vipi ili kuona kwamba pia wafanyikazi wanapata ada yao, na kama kweli vitu vimeweza kupanda itakufinya vipi wewe, na bajeti ikisomwa utasaidikaje? Ungependa usaidikeje kwa sekta gani?
Mimi ningependa
tuanze tu na wafanyikazi wangapi alafu unagawanya vipi mapato yao?
Mimi sina wafanyikazi. Ni mimi tu nafanya hii biashara kulingana na vile biashara iko, sababu nitaajiri wafanyikazi na nini, na biashara ni kidogo. Sina wafanyikazi. Kwa hivyo kama ni bajeti kisoma, ni wajaribu kuteremsha bei ya vitu vizuke bei. Kwa sababu vitu viko juu sana, kama unga, sukari, maziwa iko bei ya juu. Kwa hivyo mimi ningeomba wateremshe bei.
Ada, pengine ukiangalia mapato yako, umeketi hapa, umeangalia kuna biashara nyingi ambazo zinafanyika nyuma yetu tu. Kuna biashara ya tuktuk, tena kuna biashara ya matatu, kuna watu ambao wanapandisha watu kwenye matatu. Ukiangalia baadhi ya vijana ambao wanatafuta kazi, najua mapato yako hayawezi kukimu uweze kuandika vijana, lakini tupe tu taswira tu hapa Shanzu, vipi vijana na masuala ya kazi na hali ya kiuchumi wa kimaisha?
Hapa Zanzibar vijana wanahangaika sana, wengi wanaingia kwa tukutuku, wengi ni kuzurura tu, hawana kazi. Sasa baadhi ya wengi hawana kazi. Kwa hivyo siwezi kusema hata yani Zanzibar kuna wafanyikazi ni wengi, hakuna wafanyikazi, yani wafanyikazi wako wengi lakini hakuna kazi. Hiyo ndio zinda ile iko hapa Zanzibar.
Bajeti ikisomwa, tukimalizia tu, sekta ya elimu inafaa kuongezwa, wanafaa kuongeza pesa ili kuweza kumsaidia mzazi, na hata sekta nzima ya elimu iweze kusaidia. Wewe kama mzazi unaona kwamba serikali ikiongeza pesa hapo utaweza kufaidi kidogo?
Akiongeza pesa upande ya zure itakuwa inafaidi ile mtu ambaye anasomesa, kwa sababu itakuwa sasa akitoa pesa ile anatoa na serikali nayo inamsaidia na pesa kidogo. Kwa hivyo akiongeza pesa upande wa serikali itakuwa ni afadhali.
Natumai hii biashara yako unaifanya na mtoto wako. Tuelezee pia wewe, na tunakumbuka umepata ujuzi kutoka kwa baba yako, hivyo ndio umenielezea umeifanya kwa muda gani, na wewe na kuona ni kijana, baba amesema hakuna kazi. Je, ni kweli?
Ni kweli hakuna kazi. Asante sana. Hii kazi
inaitwa nani kwanza?
Kwa majina naitwa Daniel Jiru. Mimi nimefanya hii kazi kwa zaidi ya mwaka 1.5 sahihi. Ni kweli hakuna kazi, nimesoma mpaka kidato cha 4 na kazi sikupata, nikasema acha nimjoin babangu tuendelee kutafuta pesa hapa Shanzu. Ni kweli kuna challenges katika kupata kazi kwa vijana, lakini sasa nikasema tu acha nimjoin, manake kile kidogo tunapata na shukuru hivyo.
Mapato yenu yamekuaje? Naelewa hamjaongeza bado bei za vitu, manake mimi pia nimekuja nikanunua vitu kutoka kwenu, bado hamjaongeza bei ya vitu vyenu. Munaishije ikiangaliwa kwamba hali ya kiuchumi wa maisha umeweza kupanda?
Katika hali ya kuongeza bei ama vile tunavyouza vitu vyetu hapa, ni kweli hatujaongeza bei, lakini unaenda kuuzia mtu kitu anakuambia vitu ziko juu sahi, hata sinunui. Unapata challenge ya kwamba huyo mtu hawezi nunua kitu, lazima tu muuzie ile bei ya kitambo. Hiyo inatupatia changamoto, manake sasa tukienda kwa duka vitu vimepanda bei, hatupati. Kwa hivyo unafanya tu tunachukua ile pesa taleta, tunashukuru.
Tukimalizia, ni kitu kipi ambacho kinaweza kuangaziwa ili kuona kwamba biashara yenu inafanyika na nyinyi kama vijana mnaweza kupata kazi ya mwenyewe, inaitwa self initiative, ili kuona kwamba pia umeweza kujikimu?
Kwanza la kusema mimi kwa rais wetu William Ruto alisema ya kwanza ya kwamba hii kazi ama uongozi ni wa vijana. Aangazie vijana sana sana katika hii sekta ya hii Hustler Nation. Katika hii Hustler Nation, vijana wakipewa kazi, wakipata kazi, tutainuka. Kama sisi vijana, ni kweli tunateseka. Alituahidi tunapata kazi, hatupati. Sasa ningeomba mimi aangalie vijana sana sana katika vikundi, awape pesa. Vijana wamejoin vikundi, wapatiwe pesa. Alisema ya kwamba vijana watainuka, na ninashukuru sana, anang'ang'ana sana kwa vijana. Hongera kwa rais wetu, aendelee vivyo hivyo, lakini tu atuangalilie uchumi, angalau hii bei ipungue, maana inatufinya.
Asante sana. Hayo ni maoni. Ben Troy, those are just sentiments of this business. This is the Mkilifi business. If you need household materials, please feel free to promote this business from Mombasa. But we have been sampling the Mombasa residents. They are welcoming some of them. They are saying that it is the duty of the leaders to ensure that whatever they are passing in Parliament affects the lives of the common mwananchi. We will give you more details on what they are saying in our subsequent bulletins. But for now, Ben Troy, I hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, June Karisa, live from Shanzu, Mombasa. They're engaging some of the artisans in the budget expectations, and some of the things I've talked about is, of course, the youth and also what Kenyans have been lamenting about, the high cost of living. From Shanzu, Mombasa, we now cross over to one of the biggest markets in the region, that is Gikomba Market. We have Nduta Mukami, who has been also keen on ensuring that we know exactly what are some of the expectations from some of the business people in Gikomba. Mukami?
And a very good afternoon to you, Ben, Troy and Drew. We are coming to you live from the Central Business District, where we have been sampling some of the Kenyans' views on the budget that is set to be presented at 3 p.m. And if just to give you a brief overview of what was being talked about in Parliament yesterday, we did have the 176 votes that were given, that came through from members of Parliament who are in support of the finance bill, and we had 81 votes. And here with me, Troy, is a Kenyan who we're going to talk to, and he's just going to be giving us some of his expectations on the upcoming budget. Now, remember, introduce yourself.
I'm called Dan Koluwach.
Look at the camera.
I'm called Dan Koluwach, and I'm a Kenyan.
Talk to us about some of the expectations that you're waiting for.
My expectation about this budget is very low, because according to Kenya now, our main priority is not housing. Our main priorities are cost of living at the moment. So if the government went ahead and had another 8% tax on fuel levy, I don't think that we will manage it as Kenyans. Things are worse at the moment, and once they do that, after the breads, we will not afford the bread. Even the maize flour, unga, Kenyans will not afford that. So things are not good at the moment. And about housing also, at the moment, what I can say, the way they put it, they want to build houses. That one is a good idea at the wrong time. But they want to build houses only to the middle class Kenyans, those who have got pay slip. How about those who don't have a pay slip, those who are not working? They go to Kibera slum or Madare slum, they remove those guys, they build big houses there. Then those who are going to settle, they are middle class, the people with pay slip. So we don't know whether we'll have another slums again. Those who are living there, they will be taken somewhere again so that the government can give another slums again, they start living there. Because if you are not working in this Kenya, government is not talking about us. Government does not care about us. Because we are not working, we don't have pay slip. So this idea, it is a good idea at the wrong time, but the government is not ready for this. If William wants to collect money to stabilize this economy, we know we are in debt at the moment. He just come out clear and tell us that we want tax this money so that we can stabilize our business or our government. Also as Kenyans, we know we are in a problem as a country. And we don't want our country to be taken to red now that we have failed to pay our debt. We are not ready for that. So he can just come out clear and tell Kenyans it is this way and this way. But if you only care about the middle class, the people with the pay slip, it is okay with him. But we as Kenyans, we are not happy with this bill or with this budget. It is a huge budget that we cannot sustain at the moment. And also, what it is bad, William tells us always that in Kenya we don't have money, the life is tough. But he keep on employing people every day. Even the cars, over 50-something cars. The former president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, will employ only something to do with the 23 cars. But with Ruto, there is no money, and he keep on employing people every day. Appointment every day. He keep on traveling with over 100 delegates. The last time people, I think they went to Middle East somewhere. As big as China, 1.3 billion population. Only representatives from China, there were only 4 representatives from China. And from Kenya, there were over 100 people. So we are wasting a lot that we cannot trust William with our money. That is the problem we have. We have problem, but we have no trust with our president. Because we don't know, even if we contribute today, if that money will be used correctly. So if we could be listening for Boda Boda, Mama Mboga, He could not add something on fuel. He could not talk about housing levy now. He could not talk about the, we call it content creators, 5%. Because those are the things now that at least people can get something from them. Today, value of our 1,000 shillings, it is 550 if you go to supermarket. It has gone down, which means if I have 10,000 in my account, if I wake up tomorrow, it will be 7,000. So life is hard, and I don't know the advice, the kind of advice our president now that is misleading him to go this far. But also as Kenyans, what I'm repeating again.
Mukambi is not in Gikombo, but at the Nairobi CBD, they are sampling some sentiments from one of the Kenyans there, saying that indeed they are quite expectant of the budget, but have low expectations on that. Of course, we will be having a candid conversation on the budget and even crunch the numbers. But first things first, let's first of all have a quick break. We'll be right back.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
What if he's not really dead?
I'd be very shocked to see his greedy brothers. I'm not dead, Alice.
You